All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Interagency Equity Advisory Committee executive meeting here in the city of San Jose, California. Thank you all for being with us, both those joining us in person and those participating virtually. We will begin with roll call and meeting logistics. Justin Hall, will you call the roll, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Happy to do so. Gary Akimi Hernandez. Lisa Marie Alvarado.
Aye.
Martha Armas Kelly.
Present.
David Acevedo.
Present.
Anthony Giddens.
Here.
Gloria Huerta.
Present.
Naomi Iwasaki. One time, Naomi Iwasaki.
Present. Sorry, it takes me a minute to upgrade to panelist.
No problem. Thank you so much. Peggy Martinez. Vice Chair Andres Ramirez.
Present.
Michelle Rousey.
Present.
Lauren Fryman.
Present.
Randy Torres Van Vleck. Ualani Vasquez.
Present.
Howard Wall.
Present.
Chair Ana Gonzalez.
Present.
Chair, we have quorum.
Thank you so much, Justin. Can you please go over logistics?
Yes, we'll do. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Justin Hall, and welcome to the May 13th, 2026 Interagency Transportation Equity Advisory Committee Executive Meeting. This committee's focus will be on elevating diverse and historically marginalized voices, and will advise the California Transportation Commission, California State Transportation Agency, and California Department of Transportation on how to achieve meaningful outcomes in transportation equity, environmental justice, and equitable economic opportunities, especially as related to transportation planning and programming. The meeting agenda is located on the Commission's website at www.catc.ca.gov. Any document created for this committee can be translated into any language you need. Simply email us at transportationeac@dot.ca.gov. We will have them returned to you as quickly as possible. American Sign Language interpretation is being provided for this meeting. You should see them on your screen. Spanish interpretation is also being provided. Please visit the clerk, myself here at the desk, if you need a hearing device to receive Spanish interpretation. You can access the service also via the webinar through the interpretation tab at the bottom of the screen. Use Q&A tab if you have any questions about this. Live closed captioning is also available. Please select the Show Captions tab at the bottom of your screen. There are a number of language options available to choose from. Speakers, for accessibility purposes, we ask you please state your name prior to speaking. Committee members. All members attending remotely must visibly appear on camera unless you are unable to do so due to connectivity issues. If that's the case, please announce the technical reason for not appearing on camera. Presenters, if you're on the agenda to make a presentation, please do your best to be succinct. Remember to speak at a steady pace to allow our interpreting service adequate time for accurate interpretation. Members of the public, we welcome comments from the public as a part of each item at this meeting. For those attending in person, please submit a speaker slip to the clerk at the front of the room. That's me. Let us know you want to comment on a particular item. For those attending via Zoom, you should see the webinar control panel, likely located on the bottom of your screen. There you will find the raise hand and Q&A tabs. Please use the raise hand feature. As soon as we reach the item, give the system time to acknowledge you. Committee staff will let you know when it's your turn to make your comment. Alternately, you may use the Q&A tab to submit a written comment. Committee staff will read the comment on your behalf. As a reminder, each registered attendee is provided a unique link and number to access the webinar. These should not be shared with other participants. This can create confusion for staff making comments. Do your best to be concise, speak at a steady pace, to allow our interpreting service adequate time for accurate interpretation. Be sure that your comments add new information. If you agree with the comments of a previous speaker, simply make that statement. We ask you to make your point in 3 minutes or less. If for some reason we have many speakers on a single topic, we reserve the right to limit comments 1 minute if needed. Now, we'll remind all those sitting at the dais that the mics are hot, so just be aware of that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Justin. Next, we're going to go to tab 2, land acknowledgement, and I'm going to pass it to our vice chair.
Thank you, Chair Gonzalez. We acknowledge that the land that we now call California is the ancestral lands of over 109 nations, tribes, and peoples. The indigenous peoples of this area have a deep and reciprocal relationship with the land as its original stewards. Their ways, methods, and traditions have contributed to California's rich biodiversity and have impacted the transportation network for the state. We stand with indigenous communities and are committed to partnering and advocating for a more equitable and sustainable future. Our transportation network not only connects us to families, friends, work, and leisure, it connects us to our past and future. We embrace our past with a future commitment to inclusiveness and equity for everyone who calls this state home. Today, we are meeting on the lands of the Tamiya Nation, the Ohlone, and the Muwekma people. I'd like to invite any virtual committee members who wish to acknowledge the lands they are joining us from.
All right. Any members? Member Wong?
The City and County of San Francisco recognizes the land as the unceded ancestral homeland of the Rame Adush Ohlone Indians. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else online? All right. Here in person, anyone?
Is there anyone? Member Martha Armis Kelly, I want to recognize the Central Valley where I reside in, Merced, California. And we have our tribal lands belonging to the Miwok and the Yokuts territories. Also, I want to recognize that it is May and May 5th. We typically, us Latinos and indigenous families have looked at May 5th as our acknowledgement of Cinco de Mayo, but I'm really happy to say that in my community, the frameworks have been shifting towards recognizing our indigenous roots. And with that understanding, knowing that there are murdered indigenous women of color and children, and also peoples that have been taken from their ancestral lands and removed indefinitely, unalived. And we have to take time to acknowledge those that are no longer with us, recognizing that this is something that, although not having transportation as a direct contributor, transportation does play an important part in mitigating those outcomes. When we look at human trafficking, when we look at opportunities in the landscapes of transportation and the veins in which it intersects in the corridors, in the working places where typically these actions, deplorable actions occur, we have to do better and try to create opportunities to circumvent those situations by putting pauses and putting places for us to be able to recognize and identify those situations so that they don't occur, and having more recognizable campaigns towards raising that narrative in that area. So I just wanted to elevate that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Member Armis Kelly. A great reminder to acknowledge May as month. I also want to uplift the area that I'm from, the Inland Empire, San Bernardino, and Riverside counties, which is Tongva and Haviotam lands. And with that, is there any public comment on this item?
Not seeing any requests for public comment on this item, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the dais? All right, seeing none, we're gonna move on to tab 3, public comment for items not on the agenda. So tab 3 is a public comment period for items not on today's agenda. As a reminder, the committee may hear public comment on items not listed today, but the committee cannot discuss or take any action on these items at this meeting. Do we have any public comment requests?
We do not have any requests for public comment on this item, Chair.
All right. Thank you. It is also appropriate for our members if y'all want to uplift anything not on the agenda at this moment. Member Armas Kelly?
Again, reiterating from this morning to this afternoon, just the idea of bicycle pedestrian safety and knowing that this is a month of celebration for that. We want to acknowledge that in my county, Merced County, there were 34 incidents of bicycle pedestrian injuries and actually 3 deaths with minors. And so with that said, we can do better as a community and as a state. I'm very proud to say that we're still working on initiatives to continue bolstering that narrative of bicycle safety, inclusively District 10 is what's BPAC that I'm part of. And I encourage all our members here that if you're not connected with your local district BPAC, it's a great opportunity to listen and understand what is happening in our area. And also at the jurisdiction level where you're at, there's also local bicycle and pedestrian work. So I want to acknowledge Xavier Rodriguez. 2 years ago, he passed away, and his mother is actively working in our community, doing efforts for bringing more awareness and elevating that understanding of bicycle and pedestrian safety. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for highlighting that. Anyone else? Okay. Oh,
I just want to
Vice
make sure
Chair
that I just want to make sure that we acknowledge Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month this month. Definitely more Native communities from around the world, our cousins, definitely celebrate the richness they bring for the countries.
Yes, thank you for that reminder. All right. Not seeing anyone else, we'll move on to tab 4, introductions and welcoming remarks.
We
Sorry.
did have a member of the public raise their hand just a
Oh.
moment ago.
All right.
Are we okay to go back?
Yes, let's go back to public comment.
Marvin Norman, we saw your hand raised. Did you still want to make a comment?
Yes, thank you. Marvin Norman, I'm a San Bernardino resident, and I am joining you guys today to speak up and make sure the committee is aware of, I guess, looking forward and looking around, see what can be done about Metrolink. They are facing budget cuts from Okta and Metro, which are threatening to decimate service, which would be a huge equity impact for all the people in Southern California who rely on Metrolink to get to work, especially in this time when gas prices are up. I know the state has sent the counties for lots of money in the past for tiding over transit service, so maybe it could be something discussed what happened to that funding, why the counties don't have it anymore, even, or what is being spent on, if not the funding service, because we're also hearing concerning comments that they're worried that the counties are worried that Metrolink is just trying to use the threat of cutting service as a blackmail, which is an absurd thing to say for a transit agency, because the whole point of transit is to provide service. So it sounds weird that they think that the service provider is trying to blackmail counties by threatening to cut service if they don't get the money to provide the service. So it would be good if the equity committee could also just take the time to consider what is happening with Metrolink as well as other transit operators around the state, especially in this time when people are relying on it more due to the gas price increases. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that comment. Anyone else?
Not seeing any other requests to speak.
All right. Thank you so much. So moving on to tab 4, introductions and welcoming remarks. Tab 4 includes our introductions and welcoming remarks. I am pleased to welcome the following leaders joining us today. James Hacker, Undersecretary, California State Transportation Agency.
Good afternoon. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Thumbs up. Awesome. Great. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm James Hacker, Undersecretary of the California State Transportation Agency. Thank you all for being here and for your constant work to make California's transportation system more equitable for all Californians. On behalf of Secretary Omishakin, Governor Newsom, and the entire CalSTA team, we appreciate the opportunity to be in San Jose today. I apologize for being remote. I was unable to make it, but I know we have other representatives of the agency there, and we're looking forward to a good conversation. Particularly notable being in San Jose, where so many of our transportation innovations, whether on bike, transit, on foot, or in personal vehicles, are being tested and implemented in the real world. Your input on how to improve on these innovative technologies and approaches will help us to implement safer streets, but more importantly, more accessible ways for every person to get to where they need to go. I'm excited to hear the presentations today, and more importantly, to hear the discussions about transportation access through the California Integrated Transportation Project, as well as the Master Plan for Aging. We are all affected and we are all implicated in these efforts, or have friends and family who suffer when transportation options are not accessible, whether because of income, ability, or geography. We hope the conversations today on equity and accessibility allow us to further implement community-supported solutions and build collaboration between communities, agencies, and the state. I would like to thank you again for all the work that you do here at the EAC and emphasize the importance of your discussions, your reviews, and comments. And also many thanks to the EAC staff who've worked tirelessly and spent a lot of time making sure that we all have the information we need to take part in today's discussions. So thank you to all of you. I'll now turn it over to Chair Clarissa Falcone to give her remarks.
Thank you, Undersecretary Hacker, and good to see you virtually. We just saw each other a few days ago in person in Healdsburg, and so it was good to follow him in his remarks there as well. So great partner. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having us here at your executive meeting. To begin, I want to acknowledge the discussions and activities that took place earlier today, and I'm sorry that I wasn't able to make your morning meeting, but you had what I understand, a fruitful business meeting and transit tour. The work you're doing continues to strengthen how we approach transportation equity across all three agencies. From the Commission's perspective, the role of this Commission is both practical and essential. Your input has helped shape how we think about guidelines, funding decisions, and accountability. And it's not in isolation, but a part of a coordinated statewide approach. Over the past year, we've seen how your feedback has directly influenced the Commission's programs, from strengthening community engagement expectations to helping refine how equity is considered in major planning and funding frameworks. And I always say that equity is not a nice to have, it is a must have. These include SB 1 program guidelines and refinements to active transportation program criteria. That kind of impact is exactly why this partnership with the EAC matters. As we move further into 2026, our focus is on continuing to translate your input into action. For the Commission, that means ensuring equity is consistently reflected in how we develop program guidelines, evaluate projects, and make investment decisions across California. It also means continuing to work closely with CalSTA and Caltrans to align our efforts so that what we're advancing at the policy level is reinforced through implementation on the ground and in practice. I see the executive meeting as especially important for that alignment. It gives us an opportunity to step back, identify where we're making progress, and to be candid about where we still have work to do. And importantly, it helps ensure that the committee's recommendations are not just heard, but clearly understood and carried forward across each of our agencies. That also means being transparent about how those recommendations are used, including clearly reporting back through EAC agenda items on where they've been incorporated, where they have not, and the rationale behind those decisions, so that the committee has visibility into how your input informs agency decision-making and accountability across the partnership. We appreciate the time and expertise each and every one of you brings to this work. Your perspectives are critical as we continue building a transportation system that is safer, more accessible, and more responsive to the needs of all Californians. Thank you, and I look forward to the discussion. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the wonderful Naila Pope Harden. Deputy Director of Equity and Tribal Affairs. Welcome, Naila.
Thank you for that warm welcome, Commissioner Falcone and Undersecretary Hacker. Also great to be providing welcoming remarks with both of you guys. I think the partnership between all three of our agencies is deeply important and also expressed very much so here today. Let me start by just acknowledging, it's already been acknowledged, but May is Bike Month. And as we have a meeting where we're talking about multimodal, the importance of multimodal infrastructure and multimodal policies that don't make sure that our agencies don't just focus on cars, but also the whole network and how we move people. I want to acknowledge May is Bike Month. Also, Missing and Murdered Indigenous Persons Day. As member Armis Kelly said earlier, one of the reasons I do transportation is just because the linkage of how it gets people to where they need to go, but also how sometimes transportation plays a role in a variety of different issues. And so want to acknowledge that this is Missing and Murdered Indigenous Persons Month. Also, I think it was you guys all, I was like making sure I wasn't doing all the acknowledgements. Member Ramirez said earlier, it is Asian American Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander Month. The Native Hawaiian is newer to me, so AANHPI Month. And then also Mother's Day. And so want to also acknowledge, I think, the mothers and also the maternal nature that we can bring to this work. So wanted to get those out of the way. Earlier this month, I had the pleasure of talking to Member Martinez. As all of you, Member Martinez called us to be more intentional about the work that we're doing around ADA accessibility. And we were able to have a one-on-one and have a conversation that I think we'll see pieces of that weave through this meeting as we have the presentation on Cal ITP and talk about digital accessibility and how we make our digital space more accessible. And as we have conversations around the master plan for aging later on today and talking about how we make sure that our seniors and folks with disabilities are included as we plan policy. And really want to welcome all of you all as we go on to continue to hold us accountable, continue to amplify and raise issues as we move on. Last thing that I want to acknowledge is I'll just be remiss to say earlier this month, the Director's Office of Equity and Tribal Affairs that I lead released our Race and Equity Action Plan Progress Report. This is a summary of what Caltrans has been doing from 2022 to 2024. We're amplifying stories or equity initiatives that we've been able to advance and share. So that is something that we welcome you all to look at as we celebrate progress. Progress reports are important because one, we need to celebrate our wins, but they also give us great markers for where we need to go still. And so welcome you all to check that report out. With that, thank you so much for your time today. Really look forward to this meeting and talking about how we can advance accessibility and transportation. I'll pass it back to you.
Yes. Thank you so much. We appreciate your partnership and your commitment to advancing equity across our statewide transportation system. Thank you all so much for being here, for sharing space in this equity advisory committee, to the commissioners, the chair, and everybody involved in transportation. Y'all don't know how important it is to be acknowledged and for our input to actually be counted and acted upon. So definitely thank you so much for sharing space with us. We'll begin with remarks. Oops, no, we already did that. Is there any public comment on this item?
Chair, not seeing any request for public comment on this item.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair.
Chair
I
called
would be
one.
remiss, thank you so much. I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge the presence of my fellow commissioners here today. So Commissioner Paulette Brown-Hines, as well as Commissioner Bob Tiffin. Just wanted to make sure that the public is aware.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. All right. Any other questions or comments from the dais or online? Yep. All right. So we'll move on to tab 5. Welcome to the region. So tab 5 is welcoming remarks from Valley Transportation Authority. Welcome to Sergio Lopez. We are grateful for your attendance and look forward to your remarks.
Thank you. Welcome, committee members. It's my honor to welcome you here today to the Santa Clara Valley. My name is Sergio Lopez, and I have the honor of serving as chair of the Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority, and I also serve my hometown as a city council member for the city of Campbell. So welcome. I hear you'll be doing a tour of some of our facilities tomorrow as well. So I hope you're enjoying your stay here. I was born and raised here in Santa Clara County, and so the opportunity to represent and honor the work that all of you are doing is deeply meaningful because at this time, I believe this is some of the most critical work in the transportation industry is to bring your voices and lived experience to better inform the decisions that we make as policymakers. So a little bit about VTAs. I think you've heard we're the public transportation operator here in the South Bay, operating light rail, fixed route bus, and paratransit services. But there's a whole lot more that we do on top of us. We're unique among some of our peer agencies and also being a congestion management agency, which means that we're responsible for countywide transportation planning, design, construction of highway, pedestrian, bicycle improvement projects, plus management of our successful transit-oriented development program. So we touch on a lot of the things that the committee and the commissions, the other bodies are represented here, touch on. And as you know, historically, many of these kind of infrastructure projects, the way they were done, whether here or across the country, was not with community voices at the table. And so that's why it's important for us to have the representation and the lived experience, given the power and the ability we have to have so much impact over the lives, for better or for worse. But really for better in a transformational way if we do it responsibly and do it right, with voices like yours at the table. And Santa Clara County, as we know, is diverse. It's one of the most diverse counties in the state and in the country. 56% of our households include at least one immigrant, including my own family. My parents were formerly undocumented immigrants from Michoacan, Mexico, and I'm proud to bring that experience every day, including to my hometown of Campbell, where I was the first Latino mayor in our city's history. And that experience shapes not just the work that we do and that we try to do as part of VTA, but why I believe this work is important in the first place. Because when I was growing up, public transportation was my family's lifeline to the community. And my dad was working multiple jobs. And my mom didn't speak the language, but I wasn't even old enough to speak at that point. But what we both knew were the numbers on the sides of the buses and the routes, and we would memorize those routes, and that was how we got around. And going through that experience and knowing what it was like for her, as a mother, I now the oldest of 3 kids, but at the time her only son, depending on that as your lifeline and understanding the impact if a bus is delayed by 10 minutes, and there weren't transit apps back then, she didn't know who to ask. She might not even be able to communicate with the bus driver. So it's those kind of experiences that I try to bring into the work, and that I know all of you bring into your advisory and policy work as well. So that's why it's been so meaningful to me to chair this board, the board of directors of VTA, as the youngest chair in our history and the first to serve 2 consecutive terms as chair. And that's because transportation is one of the greatest tools that we have for equity, environmental justice, and economic opportunity. And so we try to govern according to our values. And what I love about being at VTA is that our staff doesn't just bring the technical experience and expertise of planning and transportation routes and engineering and mechanics, all these things that are hard skills, but we bring our values to the table as well in the work that we do. I know that's true for my fellow board of directors as well. And we can acknowledge that there is good and bad within our shared history as within the transportation industry as a whole. And that's exactly why we need to double down and recommit to doing better. And as Secretary Omishakin said when the EAC was first announced in 2022, when it comes to transportation, equity isn't just some abstract concept. It's part of the fabric of everything we're doing. And those are the values we try to live at VTA, and why it's so special, I think, to have you here in this community of immigrants. You might have seen outside, there's cultural events going on today. There's something happening here every day. You try to celebrate that culture. And so as VTA moves millions every year and invest billions with a B in capital projects across our service area, I'm not just proud of the work that we do to build and get our community moving, which is what we know how to do and do well, but also the work that we do to bring our own lived experience from everyone at the agency, from board directors all the way down to our frontline staff, to serving our communities and those values. And during this time when our values are under attack, there's no more important work. So again, thank you all for the work that you are doing. It's my honor to serve and to welcome you here today. And that concludes my remarks, but if there's any comments or questions, I'm happy to stay for a little bit as well.
Yes, thank you so much, Sergio Lopez, for your presentation. I know Vice Chair Ramirez and I wanted to make sure that we always do the welcome to the region, because we always want to hear and learn from what folks are doing on the ground every day in their local municipalities. And I got to say that for me, I was so impressed, the constant buses that were coming as we were taking the tour earlier today, and folks have so much opportunities to, ride the bus. And where I'm from in San Bernardino, Riverside counties, we have to wait an hour for the next bus or even more time. And some of our bus stops don't even have a sidewalk. We're like on dirt roads, right? So it's so good to see an agency that's actually doing the hard work and making sure that there's equitable access for all pedestrians and folks using transportation. And I know there's still work to do, but so far you guys are amazing. I gotta say, I am a Niner fan, so I always use the public transit when I'm here visiting, and it's impressive. There's always opportunities and you're never late. So thank you for that. And I'm gonna open it up really quick for public comment if there's any, and then we'll pass it.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and go Raiders. Not seeing any requests for public comment on this item.
Thank you. Wow. Okay.
What do you say to that?
Okay, I see Commissioner Tiffany has a comment.
We're gonna get on sports. It's actually baseball season.
Yes.
And anyway, Matthew, I know you're out there. Dodgers may be world champions, but the Giants are kicking butts the last couple nights, so I'm glad to see that. But anyway, I wanted to comment, Chair Lopez, thank you for your comments. As some of you know, I'm from just south of here, San Bernardino County, and I just wanted to say San Bernardino County works very closely with Santa Clara County and the VTA in terms of partnering on projects. And I just wanted to, from a local standpoint, San Bernardino County standpoint, thank you for your partnership. Right now, there's a very important project, intersection of 101 and 25, which is moving along very well, and it's going to have a huge impact on the commuters that come from San Bernardino County up into this area, into Silicon Valley. So I just wanted to thank you for that support. Look forward to working with you in the future.
Absolutely. Likewise.
Yes. Thank you, Commissioner Tiffany. Anyone else on the dais? Comments? Oh, Member Michelle.
Thank you. Hi, and thank you for having us today. I work with East Bay Paratransit, and we need a few members from this area on the advisory board. So if you guys have a consumer or who uses paratransit would be interested in having them if they're interested. Thank you.
Yeah, please reach out maybe through the committee staff. They can share my information, but we have very active and vocal, and it's a good thing. We appreciate paratransit users in this region who hold us accountable and let us know what we can do to best serve that community. So I'd love to put that in touch. Thank you.
Member
I just
Harms
wanted,
Kelly.
hi, Member Armis Kelly. Hi. I just wanted to echo on the idea of having the welcome to the region. Just from this example is understanding how when we incorporate, we come into your space and we're so happy that you receive us. You give us that warm welcome and give us a little more insight, because sometimes even in the tour space, right, it's not as fruitful or as recognized when you hear it from the perspective of the person that lives in that community. And I just wanted to say thank you for being here, and thank you for raising your family up, because again, Mother's Day, the idea of the matriarch, embedding, the ideologies and the beliefs. And I know that in our culture, Latinos, we're la madre, is vida, like mother is life, So your life is a representation of your culture and your family, and you're doing great things. I'm just so impressed because you're so young and doing great things, and that gives us hope for our future. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Chair Falcon.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Vice Mayor and Chair Lopez. This is a personal thing I wanted to share. And I appreciate your comments and just being in your city and welcoming us at your city hall. I'm from the San Diego region, represent that area for many, many years. I've lived there decades, I would say, but I am not originally from California. And there's a reason why I'm sharing this with you. I am from Detroit, Michigan, and my family relocated here to California from Detroit to the Philippines. My parents are immigrants from the Philippines, and that's my regalia. But the gateway to California from the Philippines was San Jose. And we stayed here for a few weeks, and it was very welcoming. I remember that. I wish Commissioner Guardino was here so that I could share this with him as well. But I just remember San Jose very, very fondly as a place where we had family. There were people that looked like me, and there wasn't that many in Detroit, Michigan. And then we migrated down south to San Diego. But this place will always have a special place in my heart, and it is a pleasure to be here. We look forward to seeing tomorrow when we do our tours some of the important projects that you are all doing here through VTA and your partnership with VTA. And so we look forward to that. And I just wanted to kind of share a personal note about why this place is very special to me. So thank you.
Thanks so much for sharing that.
Yes, thank you so much, Chair Falcon, for the words. Anyone else before we wrap up? Oh, Member Acevedo.
Hi, good afternoon. I just want to thank you for coming here today. My name is David Azevedo, member of this committee, and just wanted to share my thanks for the work that you do for older adults. I work for AARP California. We have an office in San Jose, in downtown, and our staff there work on transportation issues. You may have crossed paths with perhaps our associate director there, Amin Khan, on various issues, and just want to commend the VTA for the great work that you do to keep our older adults connected to their community and reducing social isolation and getting them connected with their jobs, their families, their friends, activities. San Jose, for me personally, is kind of a second home. A lot of my family is there all throughout the South Bay. And I know how hard and Herculean of a task it is to run a public transit district in a very sprawled metropolitan area. So again, thank you so much for being here and talking about the great work that VTA is doing. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Member Acevedo. Okay, last call. All right. So with that, let's move on to tab 6. And again, thank you, Sergio Lopez,
Thank you.
for all your hard work and everything that you do and your leadership. Thank you. All right, now it's time for committee member reports. Are there any members who would like to provide a verbal report at this time? All right, Member Vasquez.
Okay, I guess I get to kick it off. I really wanted to highlight I'm from San Diego, and I really wanted to highlight all of the great work that is happening in San Diego. So I'm going to be reporting out on some of the different things that are happening in our area. From Caltrans District 11, on April 14th, 2026, Caltrans District 11 convened the inaugural meeting of its Community Advisory Board, making a significant step toward more intentional, equity-centered, and community-informed transportation planning process. This CAB is being piloted in collaboration with Caltrans and builds on lessons learned from this Equity Advisory Committee, with the goal of developing a replicable model for community engagement in different regions statewide. During the kickoff, CAB members and Caltrans staff identified key priorities across the region, including traffic safety and injury prevention, congestion and system efficiency, climate resilience, coastal access, multimodal mobility, strengthening communication between agencies and community. Importantly, the CAB is positioned as an early engagement forum, enabling community perspectives to help shape transportation priorities, project development, and communication strategies before decisions are finalized. The next CAB meeting is scheduled for June 16th. On infrastructure and community investment, the District 11 year in review highlights continued progress in active transportation and community-centered infrastructure investments, notably following our EAC site visit in August, the 30th Street Pedestrian Bridge, Willow Road Pedestrian Bridge. There's been sustained focus on addressing ongoing maintenance needs, advancing community-driven improvements, and reinforcing importance of safe, reliable, and culturally relevant pedestrian infrastructure. Upcoming updates to be shared during the next EAC convening in San Diego will further demonstrate how EAC input has contributed to advancing these projects and strengthening alignment between community priorities and transportation investments. The City of San Diego, on the Bicycle Master Plan update, has done their draft bicycle network survey as part of its Bicycle Master Plan. The plan aims to expand a connected network of safe, accessible bikeways for all ages and abilities, support safe travel to work, school, and daily activities, establish a framework for community-informed implementation for future bike infrastructure. On our regional safety advocates continue to push for stronger alignment between the City of San Diego's budget investment and Vision Zero commitments, particularly emphasizing prioritizing infrastructure based on vulnerable road users, deaths, and serious injuries, rather than solely historical crash data. Advancing data-informed, equity-centered decision-making that accounts for underreported harm and systemic disparities. Ensuring funding directed toward high-need communities and high-risk corridors. At the same time, the city is advancing updates to several key policies, frameworks that will influence roadway safety outcomes, including the Bicycle Master Plan, crosswalk policies, stop sign policies. These updates present a critical opportunity to align policy, funding, and implementation strategies with a safe system and equity-focused approach to traffic safety. Lastly, with May being Mental Health Awareness Month, I want to highlight the critical connection between behavioral health and impaired driving. Integrating behavioral health into impaired driving education is key to building safer roads and ending drunk and impaired driving.
Great. Thank you so much. A lot of hard work, Member Vasquez. Thank you for your report. Anyone else want to report? Member Alvarado? And then I'll go to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Chair. A little bit from my region is not going to be as progressive as you heard by co-colleague. I have a little bit of somber news. In D6, which is Visalia, modern-day Wakchumni Yokoch territory, you guys have may heard in the news along the highway, a fire broke out and folks were living underneath the underpass, and it became a technical issue where folks had to come out and then We're talking electrical, staff, human lives dying, poverty, all while this is in the living day. And so just want to urge, as we're talking about data and the increase of poverty, what we're talking about is the increase of accidents and the increase of lives being lost. And so just want to really preface that as we go on in the year, we're going to see this come up. So something as subcommittees that we should be thinking about. Another thing is at Fresno State, the campus banned scooters. When we're talking about safety, and the students went up in an uproar, rightfully so, right? We want our students to get to where they want to get in the ways that they want to get there, but we want them to do it safely. What I'm thinking about in my community is if we want to reduce greenhouse gas and we want to encourage people in all forms of mobility, the state institution rescinding that policy is something that we should all be talking about, something that we should be looking at, because if one CSU did that, what does that mean for Bakersfield? What does that mean for the Central Valley where everybody copies each other? So yeah, I want to talk about that. Something else that came to mind is scooters and lithium batteries. So this is something that we all knew was coming, right? What happened in D6 is the day that the implementation happened, students showed up with their scooters and their lithium batteries and were being denied. Luckily, at the 9 a.m. route, I also ride the bus. And so I was able to get a route supervisor out, and we were able to ensure that that student got to school, was able to then ensure that they were going to get back home. And then we talked about maybe a week in advance before we're rolling out some of these new policies. That only happens because I have a direct relationship with that route supervisor on that one particular route. And so since this body has the ability to mandate these types of notices and these announcements, let's start thinking forward about, can we give some wiggle room so when we have students, and I don't know if you guys know, it's finals. You have a student who doesn't show up to one final, you're talking about a student who potentially can be dropped forever. And so these are the things that I grapple with in rural California District 6. So we talked about desks, we talked about scooters, we talked about accessibility on campus. Lastly, I want to talk about, thank you so much to the two women sitting next to me on invitation to attend the Caltrans Memorial. I was so excited going up there to just rep for D6, but I was not prepared for the personal implications of, the lives that get lost, we don't get back. For people who don't know, the reason why I am on active transportation is because I lost somebody on the roadway, and I myself have personal implications with drinking and driving related accidents. So this was a catalytic experience for me as someone who takes legislation serious and someone who takes leadership very serious. And so I want to thank the bodies to know to invite me, but I also am thinking critically about what does it mean for my communities who suffer from drug abuse and real trauma that we're really looking at as addiction. So yeah, just an encouragement to look beyond some of the numbers when we're talking about this work. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you, Member Alvarado. Member Armis Kelly.
Wow. I'm just proud to be part of this EAC, to hear the work that you're doing, and to be able to come back and just highlight some of those things. We talked so much about safety. Again, I always say safety and climate is my favorite thing to bring up. And yes, there is plenty of room for new subcommittees because we need to have a real intentional approach towards safety and climate. But I also want to tell you that I am a first 5 commissioner in my community in the county of Merced. And the Week of the Young Child, we just celebrated. And with that, as a first 5 commissioner, we're constantly looking at opportunities to create safety outcomes for our children. And so we're working on a campaign for transportation and some of the things that you take for rote, but when a child doesn't understand what a stop sign is or what a yellow light is, and 0 to 5, that's like the primary time that we start looking at how to create critical thought processes. And critical thinking is not lost. We want to embed that in our children. But as adults, we need to stop and think who, what, where, and why. And I just want to elevate that. Who and why are we doing, who does this? Why are we doing it? Where is it going to happen? And what is going to happen? So as leaders and as this body, and also to the commission, to the commissioners, we respectively understand that we have a big task. And I just continue to say thank you for being part of this. And I encourage you all to be more vocal in your own communities. I know that I sometimes drive people crazy, but I do it because um, I look at what I do as a privilege because someone is laid up in their bed somewhere in, a home along California that can't get out of bed, that might have so many ideas, so many solutions. And we need to be that voice for those people. We need to be the voice for the children that depend on us to create safe environments. And we also need to look at how we move. And lastly, I just want to say that if there's any space for understanding that technology is moving so fast and we need to catch up with policy and referendum and bylaws and so much more pauses so that we can recognize that situation, because to me that would have been a policy issue where if we could have created some type of policy or frameworks for mitigating how those vehicles or those bicycles were used on campus, it may have been a different outcome. And we didn't have that space because we didn't pause. And rather than look at really the root cause of things, we just advance and move things. So I just caution us to be very, be alert and be not afraid to take that pause to think who, what, where, and how. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Member Armis Kelly. I see Member Wong online with his hand up.
Yes, thank you. Just wanted to report on the ongoing budget crises in the San Francisco Bay Area. Like most transit agencies around the United States, the transit agencies have almost spent the COVID relief funds that the federal government provided and are facing very dire circumstances as office workers have continued to work from home, as regional transit is used less by commuters, and agencies like BART are facing rail cuts of entire lines or closing of many stations. Um, Transit agencies are threatening cuts of as many as 20 lines in San Francisco, for instance. So the impacts of transit deficits and the potential service cuts are imminent. As a result, there are many potential funding measures placed on the ballot. In the Bay Area, 5 counties are placing a regional sales tax increase to provide some funding. San Francisco's proposing a parcel tax to add additional funding, and other cities are also have their transit measures. But even if all these measures pass, the structural deficits that face many agencies probably will still exceed the money available, so that we will see continued strains on public transit. However, the good news is that the regional transit commission in the Bay Area has been working towards more coordination and integration of 27 transit agencies that we have in the Bay Area for long-term efficiencies and coordination, um, use of cooperation to ease operating costs, buying, purchasing, perhaps integrating lines between agencies. So there are a lot of good positive measures that are being made in the region. In San Francisco, there's much better customer service, much more detail oriented to safety and simple things that the riders uh, see every day. So hopefully there will be some transit funding available through these measures, but I think there's still a lot of room for improvement in how agencies focus on the fundamentals of transit and transportation. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Member Wong. Anyone else? Member Rousey.
Just want to follow up on our last cohort's, what he spoke on. You know, I think it's not just in the Bay Area that we're having a fiscal deficit with our transit. And we need to remember that when cuts to service are done with our fixed route services like buses and other things, it affects our paratransit, which is our ADA services too. And our seniors and people with disabilities are also affected. So when you change a route, their availability to get paratransit where those routes are no longer, it needs to be within a certain mileage of their home. And so cuts inevitably are going to happen if they don't get the funding they need. And I just want people to be aware that our paratransit and other ADA services will be affected. Thank you.
Thank you for highlighting that, Member Rousey. Member Huerta, you had your hand up?
I did. You might hear some 1-year-old background noises. Um, I wanted to share that in March, we launched 3 new car share locations in 1 senior center location and 2 libraries. And for us, it's very critical that whenever we launch new places, we have community events to get people signed up and educate them on what is electric vehicle car sharing, how to walk them through, how to use the service. Want to make sure that people feel comfortable using these new tools. Everything is like app-based. So we did that, and then we just recently developed a children's coloring book that has more information on our sites, locations. I'm hoping to get some coloring books for the next committee meeting to give out to anyone that's interested in having one. And we are also working on developing a little children's book on educating about what is electric vehicle car sharing in underserved communities. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Member Huerta. Next, I see Member Acevedo.
I would love one of those coloring books.
Same.
So put my name down, please. That's wonderful. So again, this is David Azevedo, member. And so my day job with the AARP, California, we are very busy here in the Capitol advocating for a variety of transportation-related bills that benefit older adults in their communities across California. And one of the bills, just wanted to flag for folks' review and attention, is around something that we don't really think about, but it's kind of wild that California doesn't know where all of our bus stops are. And this is the year of our Lord 2026. And if you think about it, what kind of service is out there that provides customer service or services like transportation, that doesn't know where their main customer connections are. And unfortunately, that's just the case of the fact that California is a big, big place. And a lot of transit agencies struggle with, making sure that we kind of know where our bus stops are in kind of the digital space and seeing how we can try to improve them. And so this bill, Assembly Bill 1599, would help take steps to do it. It's actually a bill that came out of recommendations from the Transit Transformation Task Force, which our committee has reviewed in the past. That recommendation was the result of the Senate Bill 125 that created the task force. And the specific recommendation from the task force said that in a first and last mile access to transit strategy 29D, that there would be a statewide registry of bus stops, that we could create a unique ID and start that process of finally centralizing some sort of registry and inventory of where those bus stops are, which currently does not exist. And at AARP, and I know I think a lot of us in our work know this kind of proverb or adage that I'm about to say, but you can't measure what you don't have information for. We can't get to a point where we can improve bus stops and improve the customer experience, and to think about adding shade structures for those extreme heat afflicted areas, adding benches, adding accessibility improvements. We can't start doing that without even knowing where the bus stops are. And one of the things I always bring up is my personal experience living in Fair Oaks, where one of my bus stops, my main bus stop, is in a ditch and across a 5-lane highway where there's no sidewalk and the cars go 60 miles an hour. And this is one of those things that it's a major equity issue that I believe this committee should be taking a look at, and happy to talk to anyone about that in future conversations. But I would highly recommend that for folks that are interested in this equity issue of bus stop measuring and seeing how we can start improving that part of the transit experience for all of us, not just older adults. Happy to talk about it. And again, that bill is AB 1599. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. I see Member Awasaki.
Thank you, Chair. Just to members Acevedo's comments about bus stop data or the lack of coordinated data, would welcome those types of conversations at our data implementation subcommittee. So please join if you can. Shameless plug.
Thank you. I love that. Vice Chair, do you have any reports?
I had, I just wanted to say thank you to the to Sasha for scheduling me on Amtrak, what I thought was Amtrak, and it was the Gold Runner. And I don't know if you know, but in our community, we don't have a lot of access to the Bay, and transportation is very, very important, as well as our trains. And we're looking at the high-speed rail. We're hoping it's still going to come through. Maybe not where we planned, but maybe somewhere else. But in the interim of that, understanding that we need to connect corridors, we launched a bus system coming out of Merced, going straight to San Jose, and it connects to the Bay so that folks can get to and from. And it's very reasonable. Right now, it's 50% off a ticket if you'd like to get a ticket, and it's called the Gold Runner. And I had the privilege of riding that into San Jose, and it was direct from Merced, which was exciting. I got here in a timely manner, very nice, air conditioned, very nice buses, but it was not the train. It was like a surprise, but I was like laughing at the same time because I thought, this is awesome because people need to get to work and to be able to ride something. So, and someone said, if we don't use it, someone said, if we don't use it, they're not going to think that we need it, right? So I encourage you folks to try it. You know, if you're in this Central Valley, it's a great connector and it saves on those emissions. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you for that. Vice Chair Ramirez.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, I just wanted to report back. I attended the CTC town hall meeting that occurred in South Central Los Angeles in April. I want to big up the event. It happened in the community in the evening, was heavily attended by a lot of community members. And I think it was a really robust conversation about transportation projects coming to the Los Angeles, specifically around preparations for the World Cup and the Olympics, which is it's becoming more and more a big deal for people in LA. It did start conversations about how much communities being engaged in these conversations, how planning is actually going to benefit residents as opposed to only the visitors. But it was a very fruitful conversation, and hearing the plans was important. So, and big ups to the staff that were there and the commissioners as well. Appreciate you all coming to visit our neck of the woods.
Yes. Thank you, Vice Chair, for that report. All right, seeing no one else, I'm gonna make mines really quick. So as you all have heard me in the past, I'm a huge advocate about AB 98, which is the logistics, truck route bill that passed in 2024 by Assemblymember Carrillo and Senator Reyes from our communities in the Inland Empire. So all the cities across the state of California had until January 1st, 2026 to implement their new circulation truck routes in their cities if they were in the warehouse concentration areas across the state. So now our organization is putting together a report card for the cities in San Bernardino and Riverside counties to see if they complied with the law and see how we can further support those that did not. And I was really surprised to see that almost half of the cities complied. And we were able to jump on a call with the Attorney General's office and see how we can proceed from there for the folks that didn't comply with the law. And so it just opened up my eyes, in the sense that we're still having those gaps with Caltrans and CHP because now CHP doesn't understand why they have to enforce the truck routes. And then Caltrans doesn't know where they fit in at the local level in municipalities to also support with that truck route creation and making sure that trucks are not going through sensitive receptor areas in communities, and not just for our counties in the Inland Empire, but across the state. There's more and more warehouses coming, especially to the Central Valley, to the Oakland Bay Area communities, and Stockton, right? I know Stockton has been a huge hit for that too. So with all that said, I just want to encourage Caltrans and the folks that oversee CHP to continue to have those conversations because the local municipalities can only implement these types of laws if there's collaboration. And I guess there's still that, gap in communication. So I wanted to report back on that. And I just feel like we're making huge progress. But with that, we also had the American Lung Association release their State of the Air report a couple of weeks ago. And our counties, once again, are number one, the dirtiest communities in the entire state of California, but also in the entire nation. And I just wanted to put some numbers for you all to understand the gravity and the urgency of why we want to address diesel trucks in our communities and the expansion of freeways and just the lack of investment in mitigations for our communities. So in San Bernardino County, we have about 2.2 million people. Out of those, we have pediatric asthma, so kids with asthma at 37,488 population. Adult asthma is at 133,172. COPD, 61,300 people. Cardiovascular disease, 113,556. And low birth weight or pregnancies that don't make it to the end are at 22,870. And these are all connected to PM 2.5 exposure, which is more than 50% of the pollution that we see in our communities due to diesel exhaust. And so I'm saying all of this because there's still a lot of work to be done. And I would love for all of our agencies here listening to really put some more effort in collaborating with our local municipalities and to really think when we're, approving things like freeway expansions and bridge expansions to accommodate more diesel trucks, it means more illnesses in our communities. So I wanted to bring that to y'all's attention. And then our region and crisis report will be released on June 5th, which is World Environment Day at the South Coast Air Quality Management District. We're going to have a press conference. And it's just, again, highlighting that we need to declare a public health crisis in the Inland Empire and other areas such as LA, Central Valley, and the Oakland area. And with that, I invite anyone to come and listen. We're going to have a live Zoom on our CCAJ social media account. Or anybody that wants to get involved, please just let me know and I can connect you guys to that amazing work. And highlighting our Freight Community Coalition, which is over 5 EJ organizations across Southern California that have come together to help us put this report together. So with that, I will end my remarks and go to public comment. Any public comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for a note, Member Van Vleck has joined us.
Oh, welcome. Yay.
We do have a hand raised.
All right.
Kirsten Rohr, you're now unmuted to make a comment.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you so much for your presentation. It's it's a sensitive topic out here in Yolo County in West Sacramento, just not too far from headquarters. We are in an area that is um, heavily influenced by diesel. There's a lot of diesel freight around here, and Google Maps will route any vehicles down like some very narrow and scenic river roads, as opposed to Highway 5, which is very nearby. But as the algorithm works, if it can save a tenth of a mile, it will route you that way, and it's explicitly not a truck route. So I love that this is work that's being done. Another big achievement for West Sacramento is we have the rice port that is on the Deepwater Shipping Channel out here, and we recently just got, I think, one of the nation's first hydrogen fuel cell switching engines. Um, which is one of the engines that once trains come to a yard does a lot of the back and forth switching and disassembling of a train. And this port is right up against big swaths of suburban areas, schools, and all that stuff. And when you saw the stats on how much particulate and diesel fumes would be saved, because the previous engines were all diesel, and they're not passing through a community, they are staying within a community, retreading the same 100 feet or so over and over. And we're really blessed with that new the ribbon cutting on that new hydrogen switching engine, and it's directly influencing a huge amount of diesel particulate no longer present in our community here.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Rohr, for that comment. All right. Anybody else before we move on? All right. Well, thank you all so much for your amazing reports. It is clear that we are all out there doing amazing work and really making a change in our local jurisdictions, but also across California. So thank you all members for reporting.
Chair,
Yes.
Member Torres Van Vleck has his hand raised.
So sorry. Go for it, Member Torres Van Vleck.
He's switching over the panelist role.
Oh, okay.
Good afternoon, team. How you doing? Sorry, couldn't join at 1. Appreciate you, and I had a work obligation that required me to join late, and I appreciate your flexibility. Hope the tour was a success, and yeah, excited to share update on San Diego, a project that we're working on. I'm managing a project called Reconnecting Southeast San Diego National City for Mundo Gardens, a community-based organization in National City and Southeast, which is an environmental justice community here. And we're actually working on a master planning process with Caltrans, with community members, to decommission 57 acres of freeway land, an old harmful freeway called the State Route 252 that was planned through Southcrest in the 70s. With 90 seconds of deliberation, an all-white City of San Diego Council voted to approve the project, demolishing 280 homes and displacing residents, mostly Black community members, from their homes. And there's a new exhibit called San Diego's Lost Neighborhoods that documents this. And in 2015, the City of San Diego Community Plan called for the ramps to be removed and for the land to basically be restored to the community. For a third of most of the freeway was stopped, but a third of it was built. And so Mundo Gardens did receive a federal Reconnecting Communities grant to do some of that work and lead that visioning process. And we had our first visioning workshop on April 29th, and May 2nd. We had 240 community members at the 2 events with Caltrans, with our consultant team, and it was a big success. So I wanted to shout out to all the community members that came out. We're also working on a community land trust analysis. We're going to be working. We learned from the Oakland project that's doing. They're basically a couple years ahead of us. They're doing a similar project. They're tracking down residents who are displaced from the freeway, and they're created a policy to give them first right of refusal for the new home. So, just want to provide that update that of the Reconnecting Southeast San Diego National City project. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Member Torres Van Vleck, for that amazing report. All right. Seeing no one else. Did we call for public comment? Yes, I did. Okay, perfect. All right, moving on to tab 7, California Integrated Mobility Program and California Integrated Travel Project, also known as Cal ITP. Okay, I want to make sure I got it right. Presentation and discussion. So tab 7 is an informational presentation on the California Integrated Mobility Program from CalSTA and staff Jillian Gillette, sorry, is here with us to provide that lovely presentation. So go for it.
Thank you so much, Chair Tullis and Chair Falcone and members of the committee. I'm also joined by my colleague on my team, Ritu Muralidharan, and she's doing very related work that I'm sure will come up in the discussion. And we're also joined online, I think, by Michael Coleman, who is the CIO, Chief Information Officer of Monterey Salinas Transit, which was our very first agency here in California, not too far from here. And we're also working with San Benito. Right? I heard a lot of transit agency names. So before I do one of these presentations, I often like to do a little bit of surveying to help people understand understand things that are sort of buried in our culture. So first question, how many of you use a credit card to pay for most of your stuff? Audience? Okay. How many of you use a debit card to pay for most of your stuff? How many of you use cash to pay for most of it? Okay. How many of you have an iPhone? Okay. How many of you have an Android phone? So you can see all the hands, and so you're all rich. There will be a slide on this where you can see, except for you, right? You will see, I'll bring this up again in the presentation, but I like to do this survey to kind of bring it home. So in the United States, you can pretty much tell somebody's income by how they pay for things. And the way that people who, and cash generally means that you're poor. And debit means that you're.
Julian, can you speak into the microphone a little more?
Sure.
I can't hear you online.
So paying with cash all the time generally means you're very poor. And if you pay with a credit card, you're part of 70% of American households. And this is all very relevant to transit because you were all talking about issues with transit funding and timing, rural routes that only run once every hour. But when 70% of the population pays one way, and that is not the way that transit generally accepts payment, we have a problem. So with that, the California Integrated Mobility Program and CalATP are sort of my day job and Ritu's day job too. So next slide, please. The sort of large mission is to reduce barriers between all the different modes of transportation and reduce barriers within each mode so that you can make your transportation choices seamlessly and easily so that there's no barriers in the way of you taking your trip. And we were directed to start with transit because there's so many problems with transit. So that's why my presentation today is largely about transit. Next slide, please. So CalITP was initially started as a TIRC, Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program grant that was given to the Capital Corridor. And both CalSTA and Caltrans were members of it. So Caltrans manages the project on behalf of CalSTA and the Capital Corridor. Next slide, please. We have 4 objectives that we reached in 2020 based on extensive research about where the state could make statewide investments that really make sense for everybody. So after much research, here are the 4. Okay. You're good. Thanks. You're good. So after extensive research, here are the 4 sort of legs of our table or stool. Does it work? Okay, good. So the first is, the prior speaker who gave the regional welcome, his name I've forgotten, sorry, mentioned that we now have these apps to do transit planning. So those apps are only as good as the information that's in them. So that's our first problem with transit. What is the product and how do I find it? And that is still a problem in transit. And so we work a lot on that. The second is the problem that I just raised with the survey, which is transit. Most transit, this is now changing in part directly because of our work, but most transit until we started, the only way you could pay for most transit was exact change in the cash fare box, the same as it was in 1880. And effectively what transit has been saying to most of the population is we don't want you as a customer, right? Because it wasn't making it easy for folks to do that, pay that way. The third is to make eligibility verification automatic and privacy forward. So you will probably know a lot about that. You have the fun of reapplying for your discount every year, probably depending on which transit agency you use. And so the FTA requires 3 different discounts on transit. In addition to paratransit, anyone with a disability is entitled to a 50% discount on any fixed route transit. And this is true of seniors and Medicare card holders. That's a federal requirement. But when the feds required it in the Transportation Act, they didn't provide any way to do it. So every agency does it differently with their own rules. There are 253 transit agencies in the state of California alone. So our fourth pillar is, in order to really get all this to work, we have to figure out how to make it increase financial inclusion for the and underbanked in the state of California and hopefully nationally. We are down to about 4% of Californians are unbanked. The number has been going down over time, but we are at about 19%, 19 to 21% underbanked. So we'll get into that later. So those are 4 issues that we work on. And if we can solve these statewide, it'll really make it easier for the 250 agencies to do their job, which is actually to give you a trip. Next slide. So we're going to start with payments, open payments. So open payments is the industry, term of art for paying with a debit or credit card. And it's open because it's not restricted to any particular thing. That's what's meant by open, right? You can pretty much use it anywhere in the world, your debit or credit card, almost certainly your credit card, but most debit cards as well. You can pay for everything in the world except for American Transit. So next slide. So here's the vision, right? You should just be able to pay that way, the way that you pay for everything else, you should be able to pay for it on transit. What is going on here? Next slide, please. Just like a cup of coffee. There are many obvious advantages to open payments aside from the one that I just mentioned, which is that's how most people pay. So you'd like to be able to use your top of wallet thing to pay for transit too. But New York City went first in the United States. In 2019, they began accepting debit and credit cards straight on the turnstiles and on the buses. They had a 4% increase in ridership in 2019 from July to December simply by making it easier for people to pay. 4% is a lot of riders. That is a huge increase. It's also massively less expensive than systems like Clipper or the system in San Diego. You reduce emissions tremendously because most of the time that buses are stopped, they are stopped waiting for customers to make payment, and they're not allowed to move while everybody is putting their change in, right? So the people who have already paid have to wait for the people who have yet to pay. All right, and then the final fabulous benefit is if you move on to debit and credit cards, you can do something called fare capping. There's a massive equity problem in transit passes. So a pass assumes that you can you get discounts on a pass, you pay less per trip. But in order to obtain a pass, you have to put the cost of the pass up front. You have to pay for it up front. And most people who have sort of riskier finance can't afford that. They cannot afford investing that much money in a pass. And a pass is a paper-based idea anyway, and we're in a digital age. So you find that most transit agencies make their revenue from single adult fares, and a lot of that is actually lower income people who don't have the ability to buy a pass. So you can do something in a digital era by thinking digitally first, and you could do something called fare capping. So London went first with this, and in this way, you basically earn the value of a pass based on the fare policy of the agency. So the transit agency can say, you're not going to pay more than 2 trips on my system, and after that we cap it. So you tap your debit or credit card if you set it up through us, and the customer never pays more than 2 trips in a day, say. And you can set it for weekly and monthly. So consumers who are lower income basically earn the value of a pass, paying as they go. And this also has value for people who are transit curious that also don't want to do a pass and just want to try something. You very quickly can reward them by not charging them over and over again on the same day. Okay, next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, so these are the stats in the United States. We have about 4.5% are unbanked, and whereas 95.5% of US households are banked, and you can see the stark difference in who's banked, who's not, and therefore who's paying with what. This is a direct quote from the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, which does biannual research onto how America banks. And it's largely done by the San Francisco Fed. And we work closely with them to kind of help them ask some questions that we're really interested in. Next slide. So this is the chart that that's the survey, right? You can see that effectively, people who are banked, we have a 2-tiered transportation system. Next slide. And the way that looks is this way. This is the same slide as just before, only I've tried to make it really pregnant with what's going on. Pretty much, if you have a car, you're, well, absolutely, if you bought a new car or most used cars, you are banked, especially if you took out a loan. And that means that you're using a credit card for most of your payment. If you're underbanked, you're in that sort of squishy middle, which is 25,000 to 75,000 per year. You probably are using more of a debit card, right? But many transit riders in the United States, because of the way we operate transit, are paying in cash. So, the problem of cash payment exhibits itself in every single transportation mode, right? The longest lines on a toll road are always the cash lines, right? So you are paying with your time. And this is a really important concept to get our heads around when we're starting to think about climate change. If we're going to move to zero emissions, like hydrogen fueling and electric fueling, electric vehicle charging stations, we want them everywhere. They're not going to be like gas stations. They're going to be small things everywhere, and they will not take cash. So ironically, though, under and unbanked people are far more likely to need an EV charging station somewhere on the go because they're much more likely to live in apartments or not to have expensive refueling infrastructure. So all of us that have credit cards, we probably have access to a garage. And so we can refuel our electric vehicle at night at home. But that's not the case for this 30% of people that we're talking about. So that's the future that we're looking at. And you can see this exact same problem everywhere in transportation. And it also you also see the same set of problems around payment in many government services, particularly any government service that tries to provide any kind of benefit. Next slide, please. So this is how the FDIC, this is some of the most beautiful bureaucracies I have ever seen. And the quote, I'll just read it out. Cash use for consumers making less than $25,000 a year exceeded the combined cash use for all other American household income groups making more than $75,000 a year. This highlights that the access and use of the full suite of payment choices is not always available to all members of the US population. So let me untangle the bureaucraties for you. What they're saying, and they want to say it this way because the Fed actually regulates banks. What they're saying is that there are not good payment products for anyone who's underbanked or unbanked, right? Please.
I'm getting emotional. I teach a class with my students on a liberation theology, and we start with data like this. And the reason why I'm getting emotional is, what you're saying in my own human terms is those of us in poverty have to use our cash more. And what the choices you leave people with is I'm putting $20 into $1.75, which means my $17 for food is now earmarked for this one bus route that I can't use at this other one. And so I need to name that because this was my day-to-day experience, and I speak for 30 people every time I get on a new bus. This is a problem. And I want to say thank you to Gillian on that.
I'm going to haul out my props because sometimes if you don't get this problem, you bet. Like you don't want to store your 20 on a Clipper card because it can only be used for Clipper. It can't be used for anything else, right? Like you can see YouTube videos of people loading up tap cards in LA and saying, I'm only going to put on 250 because I can't afford more than that. That's all the cash I have. Right. But issuing that card from the transit agency typically costs $3.50. The fare is only $2.50. And so there's a lot of these, we're spending $3.50 every time the customer drops the tap card, which they no longer need because they've only used it for $2.50, right? This is all upside down in how we spend our transit money. So, but what's going on here is this is a banking problem. And it's been a banking problem for a long time. I grew up poor and I got food stamps and I know what it's like to live on cash. But the tech companies are tired of the moat that is around the banks because you can't really be in the network business, which is what a lot of tech companies are in, when 30% of the population can't work with you, right? It really limits what you can do. So Uber, Amazon, all those people, how do you pay them? And so finally, a bunch of tech entrepreneurs and even some banks have gotten into this space and they issue payment methods. So Cash App, we worked with them in Monterey. Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, right? Venmo is, and I'll show a slide later that kind of shows you by demographics how Americans are choosing those different products based on how they're marketed. So if you are unbanked or underbanked, there are options. You can open up a Cash App account without any money on it. It will cost you to add money to it, but it will cost you a lot less than it costs typically as a going rate. And most banks do actually have lower minimum fee products, but they don't advertise them. And they're a pain you still have to go into the bank branch and sign up for them. But those are all available on a site called Bank On, which is a fantastic national nonprofit that we work really closely with. And you can look up California Bank On Bank programs, and you can help organize your communities and give people information on how to get a no or low fee, no minimum balance, no overdraft fee account so that we can get this 30% of the population banked well enough so that we can really get their benefits to them digitally. Next slide, please. So this is what I was referring to. You could kind of see the demographics of how these different brands break out at the moment. Venmo is very clearly breaks younger. My kids all pay for everything at college with Venmo. And I have some friends at the McKinsey Consulting Group who gripe about the fact that their junior consultants can't rent cars. And the reason that their young consultants who are fresh out of college can't rent cars is they do everything on Venmo. And Venmo doesn't report to the credit bureaus, and therefore they have no credit rating. So in the United States, you are someone if you have a credit rating. This 30% of the population that we're talking about here has a thin or no credit rating. So how are we going to solve that? And many people say this is not a transit problem, but yes, it is, because this is about payment. And transit agencies directly interact with American consumers every day. You know your friendly local bus company. So it's a great place to try something with somebody you trust, and you're doing it twice a day, and the amount of money that you're spending is very small. So when Transport for London first began accepting debit and credit cards in 2014, they had programs like the ones that were part of the work that we're doing with Cal ITP, and they found that customers who used their bank card for the very first time on transit very quickly began to use it for everything else, right? It is like the, entree into a much larger universe. So next slide. I'll try to hurry it up. Okay, so now we're going to talk about automating the benefits, right? Because if you are a senior and you tap your credit or debit card on the bus, you want to make sure that you get your 50% discount, and you don't want to go to some transit agency's customer service desk 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, and fill out a bunch of paperwork. And there are transit agencies that, in order to document that you are a senior, will take a photocopy of your driver's license and store it. That is not, transit agencies are not supposed to be dealing with PII, but government agencies, because we haven't made it digital this way, are storing a whole lot of private and tremendously private information that they should not be sharing. So a copy of your driver's license for one, but on a disability, these agencies know that what kind of disability you have and who your doctor is, and they'll store that. That is not okay, right? The rest of us would scream, those of us who are paying with our debit and credit cards, if something like that were done to us. Next slide.
How we get a discount? Just reality.
Yeah, please.
If you're senior, you can by age get the discount, and you don't necessarily have to get a doctor's note or things like that for your disability and your discount. But if you have a disability from the age of 18 up, you have to turn in paperwork about your disability and have an approving disability to qualify for the discount.
And you have to do that, the documentation that the transit agency will ask for varies by transit agency.
So HIPAA typically covers, like you were talking about PIA, personal information. When you have personal information like that, where are they keeping this?
Or the transit agency decides in a drawer somewhere. It's not HIPAA because it's not transit. So the HIPAA rules don't apply, and we're government. So those kind of rules don't apply, right? So the information the government collects about you is much more extensive than what parts of the private sector collect about you. So, but we don't have to, right? Some of this is just, it could be made much easier. And that's exactly the business that I am in at Cal ITP. As is Ritu, please.
The only reason that I kind of like it came to me is because I have a family that doesn't use the system for transit, and they have a disabled child, but because they have a mixed status, would that be that would probably be a reason why then, I guess, because they don't want to be tracked, I guess. Oh, that's crazy. Thank you.
Yeah, you're getting it, right? These are all interwoven, and they all stem directly from these identity and payment issues, that this is the way that we set up our country. In other countries, when I say, what are your minimum balances? They laugh at me. They're like, what? So other countries, the banks are required to give you an account, no minimum balance, no nothing. I mean, it's like, you can't, and in Denmark, the Danes won't give you your benefits unless you put it on a bank card. You just can't get the benefits. They require it. We're the opposite here. All right. So in terms of automate, let's automate this. Welcome to California. We are the best state to start this with for a variety of reasons. So obviously we're going to increase ridership if we make it real simple, right? I give you a driver's license, or my colleagues give you a driver's license in California. You can use it in Massachusetts, because it's one of the few systems in the United States that was designed to be interoperable from the beginning. So I want us to get to a place where Monterey Salinas can give you a senior discount, and you can use it anywhere in the country because you're a senior. It's the same rule. Why shouldn't it be the same verification read, right? And once you make transit interoperable that way, I'm now a senior. People are afraid to use transit. And if you have to go into the office and right when you're traveling, you're just not going to do it, right? So if I, as a senior, can confidently use know that I've verified once, and I can pay with this debit card that I registered on, and I can pay that way everywhere on transit in the United States, I'm going to use transit a lot more, right? That's a barrier. So the second benefit of this, obviously, is that we get all the transit agencies out of a business that they don't really want to be in. They really don't like doing this, right? But they're afraid of giving the discount without having proper documentation because they get audited by the FTA. And also they don't want to be looking at your driver's licenses, right? But if you present them your driver's license, humans have eyes. They're just, you can't just look at somebody's birth date, right? Okay. And then the final point is it just makes everything easier. So next slide, please.
Wait,
Please.
okay, sorry to add to this, because so on my driver's license, there's a permanent disability identification that I have a permanent disability. This would make it easier than me having to fill out paperwork in multiple jurisdictions.
Absolutely.
This would make it so that I don't have to call Sacramento's paratransit and set up my eligibility because I'm already eligible in another area.
Exactly. Exactly. It should be portable. It should be portable. We talked about portable medical benefits. That was a big phrase 20 years ago, right? Well, why not portable transit benefits? We do it for cars, right? Your driver's license is good everywhere. Why don't we do it for transit? So it's the same kind of idea. So these are the
equal access
equal
for
access,
for,
equal
for
access.
everybody, not just
Exactly.
regular people, but for seniors and people with disability to give us equal access to the services.
Exactly.
With our discounts.
So, all right, here I told you the 3 discounts that the Federal Transit Administration requires, but doesn't provide a mechanism to do it, right? So older adults, persons with disabilities, and Medicare card holders. But this list up here didn't put up Medicare card holders, but these are very typical discounts you'll see in transit, right? You can, in a lot of transit agencies, you can flash your driver's license, and if it has veteran on it, you get a veteran's discount because the bus drivers looked at your driver's license, right? Those are very common discounts, and we are working our way through supporting all of them because the state largely has this information about people that are that fall into these buckets. So next slide, please. So to kind of give you a sense of how crazy this is in terms of driving people away from transit, we looked at the eligibility requirements for the FTA discounts at 191 agencies, California, and we kind of threw up our hands after that because there's more, there's a lot more. We found 83 different criteria for you proving that you are a person with disabilities or that you're a person of low income, right? Each agency makes up its own rules because there's no guidelines from the federal government or anyone else. We found 17 different definitions of senior. So some, folks on transportation boards think, oh, I want to be good to the community. I'll lower it to 55 or 52 or 53. So we have multiple definitions. What this set of data reveal is that if you're a transit customer that is eligible for a senior discount, let's just take the senior example, you have no idea what the price of your trip is going to be. Right? So if you want to if you want to sell things in the United States, right, you have to tell the customer what the product is and where they can find it and how much it costs. We can't, right? That's a big reason that people are afraid of using transit and won't use transit because they might not have enough money to make this trip. And Google and Apple are, we've been working closely with Google and Apple to get these data pieces right. They'll report the price of your trip. I don't know if you use Google to plan a transit trip and you look at the bottom of the trip that you chose, it'll often have the price. But all Google can show at the moment is that they will combine the single adult base fare, right? And that will give you kind of a sense of the upper limit of the price of the trip. But if you need a discount, you have no idea in this instance, right? Because, like when my mom was here, she had to go down to San Carlos to get her senior discount on Caltrain, even though she lived in San Francisco, right? And they gave a different discount than BART, right? The Bay Area has kind of started to work some of that out through through talking to each other, but that's not true around the rest of the state. Okay, next slide. Next slide, please. So we wanted privacy first, digital first, and we're going to be like Henry Ford and you can have any color you want as long as it's black, right? So we're gonna use consistent definitions at the state. So if you want to work with us, you have to define older adults, seniors as 65 and older. If you want to give it to people who are younger than that, fine, but you're going to have to do it at your customer support desk, whatever. We're not going to automate custom rules for every transit agency because then we have to have hugely expensive technology for no good reason. All right, so the idea here is centralize the eligibility for people, not the price, right? Each transit is going to cost different things with different agencies. Next slide, please. Next slide. So my colleague, Michael Coleman, I hope is still here. We'll see if okay.
Still here.
Okay, good. He should really talk about this slide. I've been wanting to do this project for a really long time because I came from payments and banking. And like I said, I grew up poor. And so the fact that transit wasn't part of the system drove me nuts. So when we started in 2019, point of sale terminals for transit did not exist in the United States. A garden variety, right? Point of sale terminals for transit simply were not available in the United States because transit wasn't thinking this way. So, I have contacts at Visa, so I worked with Visa and we got we borrowed some from overseas and we strapped them to Michael's buses at the height of COVID. And his boss called me the day after we turned them on and said, two words that I'm not going to say, people are tapping. And I said, of course they're tapping because they know what that symbol means. They know what that means. And he said, yeah, but you don't understand. It's the height of COVID. The only people taking my buses right now are super, super poor people who have no other choice. And I said, yeah, but they're not stupid. And there are alternatives now. And many, many poor people are very much digital first. They all have cell phones. And it's the Valhalla that we're all looking for to make sure that you don't just have this thing, but you also have a great digital way to pay inside of it, right? So a lot of people are on their own figuring that out, but not everyone. It's still a big problem. So Michael, why don't you start talking about what our demonstration was like?
Yeah. Thank you, and thanks everybody for allowing me to be on today. I'm Michael Coleman. I'm the Chief Information Officer for Monterey Salinas Transit and largely responsible for our technology deployments within our agency. As Jillian pointed out, during COVID, we actually did a test of this project. Basically, in very simplistic terms, and as people can see in this demonstration slide, all we really did was deploy a environmentally hardened payment reader. It's exactly the same type of reader that you would see in a retail store, coffee shop, McDonald's, Target, Walmart, whatever. Functionally, it is no different. It has a tap to pay reader on it. It connects to a payment network on the back end, and it processes a transaction. And in the beginning, we started with Visa. As of last year, we actually support all the major payment networks. So, I can do Visa, MasterCard, Discover, American Express. We're certainly looking at expanding into non-traditional banking networks as well at this point. And we, in essence, removed that burden from our passengers of trying to decide, do I have a bus pass? Do I have to get a ticket? Do I have to have cash on me? Do I have to have any of those pieces? If it's in a phone, if it's a digital form, if they can pay it, if it's a card that they have on them, they simply can tap it and we deduct. Even without identity-based management, we actually did incorporate, fare capping. As long as the same card is used consistently, as long as the same payment method is used consistently, we actually add that fare capping automatically. So in essence, we've taken also that burden away. If they tap more than 3 times in a single day, we do not charge any more than that. If they tap more than 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 times in a 2-hour period, because we are a time-based system, we don't do additional charges for that. Transfers, in essence, are eliminated. Because again, you can ride any of our buses during that 2-hour system, and we consider that to be a ride on our system. So there's no additional charges are built. We don't really absorb PII. You know, Jillian's right. That is something that, you know, as an agency, we've been very concerned about as well. It's something that admittedly is a personal, you know, deal for me personally, because I've come up through data management, cybersecurity, you know, and data protection space. So I can tell you we were very highly motivated as an agency to reduce that PII footprint. I really don't want to be, taking it as an agency. And the reality is we have other agencies within the state of California and even within the federal government that have that information. All I really need to be confirming is, does that information exist? You know, and once I've confirmed that, we're just storing the yes, no answer. It's anonymized. That has expanded. We are at the point now where we're trying to retire our legacy system in this space. We're trying to expand validations. We're looking at building a validation structure for higher education in our network. That's currently in a scoping and testing phase. And the idea, again, is to sort of take the same approach where we don't really want deep information on, you know, whether or not somebody's a student in higher education. We just need to know they are a student in higher education, and then we can apply the discount. We're also looking at other areas and other spaces. The system is simple. It has the benefit of being, you know, moving us out of the banking system. You know, we do not have to be a bank at this point. We behave more like a retailer. And like any retailer, we're allowing the open loop payment structure and the payment network, you know, to process all those transactions and to make deposits into our system. And we get tracking like everybody else does. But we don't. Yeah, please.
How much is a modern cash fare box these days?
Oh, goodness. You mean the actual volume that's going into a fare box, or how much the fare box is costing me?
How much is how much would a new fare box cost you per
The new
month?
fare box is costing me approximately $25,000. And if you're talking about the fundamental difference on my agency, my retail type tap to pay device is under $1,000.
So you can save a lot of money.
A lot.
This is a lot cheaper, a lot safer. Long Beach Transit is their cash fare boxes are at the end of their useful life, and they're looking at, we're going to have to spend $8 to $10 million to replace all of our cash fare boxes. Is that how we want to spend $8 to $10 million? No, right? We could talk about free transit, but transit agencies need to know who, you know, that people are using. They need to count people so that we can plan the service, right? And blowing $10 million on cash fare boxes is crazy. So the numbers are like, you know, it costs, depending on the type of transit. If you're talking just about transit, it costs about 20 to 22 cents on the dollar to collect that dollar. Whereas retail is like 3%, right? 3% is what a merchant pays on credit card to take a credit card, right? And a lot of them don't like that, but 3 cents is a lot. The difference between 20 cents and 3 cents is a lot. And that could be putting a lot more transit out on the road. So next slide. I'm getting close to being done. So yeah, Michael already talked about all the benefits that they're seeing. They just are amazing, and they are really leading this push. Next slide. Okay, so how does it work? The identity gateway. So Michael and all the transit agencies that work with us get a URL that they put on their website, or that's a little QR code that the customers can click, and a conversation begins. So you're the customer, you're on the white side of the slides, and you are taking this link in your own browser on your phone, and it's sending you to the right side. And the right side is mostly operated by us, by the California Department of Technology, which I partner with very closely. So they built this gateway that will only accept legitimate requests, right? And a legitimate request is coming from a transit agency that I have said, yes, please, CDT, this is an agency in the program. They can request. And then CDT takes that request and sends it to whoever is the right identity provider for that use case. And then then the customer has to log in to prove that they're them to whatever that identity verifier is. And the identity provider will respond with an electronic token that it sits in the customer's browser, and then the customer can connect that token to their payment card based on a question from the transit agency if they want to. The token then disappears. So the transit agency never sees the token. The token is not stored anywhere. None of this is stored at the state of California. We don't want it. We don't need it. Okay, so next slide. We can always go back to this because sometimes people want to see slides like that. So I just want to call out a bunch of amazing partners in addition to Monterey Salinas. So the first one is login.gov, which is the federal single sign-on system. It sits in front of every federal agency. So if you've ever gotten a grant or logged into Social Security or, I don't know, are a veteran, what you're really doing is using your login.gov account and getting to the agency behind that, the agencies behind that. That will never go away because login.gov has saved the federal government so much money, and it just, it makes it easier for a lot of customers. We can talk about how you can exist in that database without papers, because you can, but it's an issue of trust, right? So then the Department of Technology is our huge partner in this. They really want to grow this program, starting with transit. Little Pay is a non-predatory vendor that stepped up from the very beginning with Monterey Salinas. They run a very thin piece of software that holds all of the risk so that the transit agency doesn't take the risk, and they do the math. You tap your card on the device says tap, the Little Pay takes what it knows about your card account and calculates the correct price. So we need software that does calculation because some people get discounts. Otherwise, it would be even simpler. Next slide, please. We have also, since we started, there are also APIs. There's ways that, depending on who you are, you can connect directly with a federal agency that you may be more familiar with than login.gov. So the Veterans Administration has really great digital services, and a lot of vets are used to using it. So you can verify your for a veteran's benefit through the VA, and our software will send you there. Ditto with Medicare.gov, ditto with CalFresh. The Social Security Administration just reached out to us because they want to issue a credential as well. So a lot of this stuff is starting to happen, and we're sort of leading out of California because we have the capacity to pull these things together. Next slide. Okay, so very quickly, let's put it all together, and then I'm out of your hair. Next slide. So what I want you all to think about is, why should we stop at transit? Why are park rangers fiddling with change? Park rangers give you a 50% discount if you're a senior. Why are park rangers looking at your driver's license, right? You see where I'm going with this. We have collected 138 or something state agencies that provide some or trying to provide some kind of benefit, right? And they all come with their own different piece of paper and different eligibility verification things. And I have my prop with me, which is, so if you're poor, you wind up with a very fat wallet of a chit for this and a chit for that, right? And if you, as a poor person, so here's all my transit cards, right? That's a lot. These are for different transit agencies, right? So, if you're a poor person in the United States, you want carry around a pretty fat wallet. And if you lose it, it's a nightmare. It could take you years to get everything back. If my wallet gets stolen, I call an 800 number and I get a new credit card, right? That's it. But I'm protected by the banking laws, and the provider of that product cares about the consumer experience, and it's simple. So we could get here as a state. Transit is obviously the first use case, but we need to get all the transit agencies really on board. And we'd love your help with that. And we'd love to really push this equity as much as possible. And next slide, please. If we can get everybody go all the way to the fourth bullet, which is getting everybody to financial inclusion, then we're really starting to score the big thing. In Europe, they don't have credit bureaus the same way that we have them here. They use other information about a consumer to decide whether they're creditworthy or not. So they ask questions, they look up your data to see, have you paid your rent on time for how many years? Have you paid your utilities on time? That's the data that other countries use to establish your credit worthiness. And there's a push from banks like Chime to try to do that in the United States. Some of these alternative banks are starting to publish some of this information on people's credit files. The big banks all just ignore it. And if that's all that's on your credit form, they won't look at it. But that's starting to change because the traditional banks now have competition. What I will say is the final point on this is I, as a state worker who is in the benefits business, am in your way to building credit in the United States because I'm not helping you get on a debit card. I'm giving you some phony piece of paper or plastic instead. If we can get to a system where the consumer is used to getting their benefits in this automated way, then all of the information about them gets associated with their own account and not with a Clipper account, app account, or this account, right? Like, and then you, then the information about the timeliness of and your appropriate use of your benefits means something on putting you on the ladder to financial inclusions. The final thing on that is that lots of companies are interested in, working with us on these kinds of things. So rewards and loyalty programs, all those things that we know and love, which is why you'll never get rid of the credit card system in the United States. You can translate a lot of government programs into incentives, right? So, I could give you an incentive, either cash back or free transit trips if you choose not to drive, or vice versa, right? We could start to translate our government programs into this language, this grammar that most Americans are already used to. And EV charging companies would love to give you a discount on EV charging if they knew that you were a transit rider, right? So there's some examples of just this bigger, safer, better world that we could all be part of if we would understand the problem and start with some, pushing for some things like this. Next slide. That's it.
All right. Wow.
And Ritu can talk to you about a piece of this, which is mobility wallets, which is a sort of a related issue where we can also segregate if you get cash from a government program that the government wants to restrict to a specific thing, we can do that in the credit card and bank card universe. And Ritu is working on that through a federal grant called Attain, and she's working with LA Metro. And yeah, talking to the mic.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for letting Cali 2P be here today. It was really inspiring to hear a lot of personal stories today, so happy to be here. My name is Ritu Muralidharan. I'm a senior transportation planner at Caltrans, and like Jillian said, working with Cali 2P. And specifically, I'm helping manage the Southern California Mobility Wallet project, which is funded through FHWA Attain grant. So we partnered with LA Metro and UC Davis on a mobility wallet pilot, which will essentially help facilitate low-income Los Angeles County residents that travel in the region with a digital mobility wallet. This is comparable to a preloaded debit card with funds that can only be used for transportation services, including several transit operators, bike share, private mobility operators, and we're hoping to even include roadway pricing, such as paying for express lanes. So with this project, we're hoping to identify those users that'll most benefit from a transit subsidy, similar to folks who receive EBT or CalFresh, and help those travelers pay for various transportation services. So they're not just limited to what's the only transit service that's available to them in their region. Yeah.
So we're trying to grow the program, and like you open every door that we can to make all of this work. So I don't know if we still have time for questions, but
Yeah.
we certainly answered some as we went along, but we're happy to take any questions that you have.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation and information. I think everybody's really excited about this. Really quick before we go into comments and questions, are there any public comments on this item?
Thank you, Chair. Not seeing any requests for public comment on this item.
All right. So are there any comments or questions from the dais or online? Okay, I see our first two hands. Member Wong online. Oh, you're muted. Okay. While Member Wong figures out the technical stuff, we'll go to Member Acevedo.
Jillian and team, thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. Thanks for joining us here. This is David Azevedo with AARP. Kudos to the progress you've made. I think I've used the word Herculean before in this meeting. Sorry to use it again, because this is, I think, such a Herculean task that you all are doing to get us modernized and to provide more opportunities for more writers, which is what our system does need. So my question, I really latched on to your idea and the pilot that you're doing to standardize some ages for, we've heard that before from folks where, you get a transit pass for someone who's 65 in one town or 55 in one town and then 65 the next, and then they get confused and they can't, take advantage just getting from one town to the next. And we all know how our metro areas are. I mean, especially in places like LA County and the Bay Area, where cities kind of, the boundaries are, people don't stay in their one city when they travel. They're going through several of them. So I really love this idea, and I'm happy to chat more offline about potential ways that we can standardize that across the state. But I'm just curious, to what extent are you familiar with Caltrans or anybody else that's here from CTC or CalSTA? To what extent can your agencies already do what you're trying to do here? It sounds like we have a pilot that we're starting that kind of steps forward, but to what extent can your agencies already do something to standardize? Or do you need, and when do you need legislation to come in to help standardize?
Well, speaking for Caltrans, I mean, Caltrans is the home of this whole initiative. I'm a Caltrans employee, but we were funded initially by CalSTA to try to kind of get Caltrans to go in this direction. We have limited term funding. My team and I all go away next June, unless the legislature gives us a budget extension to make us permanent. So far as I know, this is the only effort like this kind of anywhere. And we're starting with transit agencies because a lot of them are really suffering and they're facing consumers at the end of the day more than state agencies are, and they want to provide a better experience. So if we can prove it with transit, it's the same reasoning to take it to parks and everything else like that. That's just not really how we work as governments. We could, maybe the next governor says, okay, we want to have a center of excellence in benefits payments. And your job, is to do this with all the agencies or something. I mean, that would be a really big lift. But there is no one at the state that is thinking of state agencies as merchants that need payment services, right? The retail, Visa and MasterCard and all the companies that provide the hardware that you see in restaurants and stuff, they know how every business works, and they've been providing information and tools to make those retailers more successful. We don't really work with the networks that way in state government. We could, but that's just not how we're set up at the moment. So I don't know about CTC, but maybe my colleagues from CTC could address that.
Yeah, I think our thoughts would be similar to Caltrans. I mean, at CTC, we don't ourselves deal with direct payments necessarily. So I think it would be more partnering with Caltrans and supporting their efforts in that direction.
Does that answer your question?
I think it does, and I've said this, I think, a couple of times, but I don't know how familiar people are with the Spider-Man meme, where you've got three identical Spider-Men pointing at each other. that's been my kind of idea of what the state is like in a lot of transportation benefits conversations. It's like, oh, it's your job to do that. No, it's your job to do that. And there's never really a clear line of accountability or a clean line of ownership. And so that's why I'm really excited to hear about this effort that you are taking responsibility. You are taking ownership of standardizing and beginning the standardization of this. And so just really, again, kudos to for you and your team stepping up on that level of effort. And I'm just really curious going forward how we, as an advisory commission, can be behind efforts like yours to where we can support Caltrans and agencies like Caltrans and taking ownership for these really important things where the customer doesn't care, right? If there's a service problem, if there's a frustration, when they call up, they're just not going to take the transit, right? And so you have the effect on ridership and the effect on the idea of, well, if I can use my phone, if I have the means to be able to get a Waymo or an Uber or a Lyft because transit is so inconvenient, I'm going to do it. And that's a huge equity concern that AARP has, that I have personally, and I think a lot of others share, is that, when transit agencies kind of point to each other, and even internally in transit agencies, oh, it's not my fault to fix this customer frustration, or I can't do it because of XYZ. Again, the customer doesn't care. And the customer is just going to have that frustration and turn away from ridership. And we need to fix that. And that's why I'm really happy to see these efforts that you're leading. So again, thanks for sharing that update.
Thank you.
Yes.
David, if I could respond a little bit to that. This is Allison Joe with Calsta. It is a little bit like the Spider-Man meme, and it's also kind of doesn't sit in anyone's lap in terms of anyone's problem, right? Because the state doesn't necessarily directly require transit agencies to do this, right? And this is
state agencies.
or state agencies, right? So we're here to help, and it's really hard to make some of those things move. But what we're seeing is the absolute value in doing this. It's the right thing to do in the right direction to move. It's just a matter of that confidence and the sheer talent in trying to put this all together and connect dots like I've never seen before. And I think it's really worth your time here as the committee to understand that this is happening behind the scenes and in your own universes and your own transit networks, for however it happens to work. Think about where and how we could implement this better. And this is a really great opportunity. So Julian and Rita for coming in. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And for doing the work. It's not about just coming in.
Thank you. I'd rather be doing the work than this presentation, but it's super important. We're at Caltrans, which is an implementing agency, and we try to get all this going, but we're delighted and honored to speak with you.
All right. Before I go back online, we have Commissioner Tiffany who has a comment.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you for really a kind of a mind-blowing presentation, I think, for a lot of us. Just following up, on the commission, we tomorrow we're going to have a meeting and on Friday, and we approve huge amounts of money. And right now, we have funding shortages going forward, and that means as we go forward, we're not going to have the funding that we need to have transportation in the state like we need it. And a lot of it means that, like active transportation projects, we don't have the money that we need. But it's really all across the board. And, every meeting we are approving, putting huge dollars toward transit programs, which is great, and we need it, but we're not seeing the ridership.
That's right.
So there's, I struggle with this. There's a real disconnect. We're supporting transit, but we're not seeing ridership. So it's not really getting to what we want. And yet your presentation is showing us where there can be huge cost efficiencies.
Yes.
So from my point of view, and I'm sure I speak for all of the commissioners, we need to address this kind of stuff like right now. Because we need more cost effective, more cost efficiency with Caltrans, with everything. So we have more money to spend it where we need to and get people off the roads using transit. So anyway, thank you for your presentation. I'm curious, I know you said they are transitioning, but right here, as we've been talking about in the Bay Area with BART, which we're going to be touring tomorrow, they've got an enormous problem, and because of ridership. So, if 4% or 10% or whatever more riders could be on BART because it's easier to pay, that would be huge. And I know they're making some transition, because a year ago I went on a tour and I had to do a Clipper thing. And just recently when we were in San Francisco, I could use my credit card. So kudos for that. But anyway, great presentation. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. I want to go back to Member Wong. Are you okay to speak now?
Yep, I unmuted.
All right.
I found that unmute button.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. This was a sensational, visionary presentation. And I think in like any technology or, government breakthrough, it's the programming and creating that vision. And you have a very good start in creating the programmatic, fundamentals, that criteria that you want to meet. So hopefully, that could then translate into a kind of a PayPal startup or a Visa combination PayPal startup who could take that and start creating the apps and software that would permeate not only California but the country. Towards that end, I think it's important to uh, also touch base with best practices around the world. As you know, the Bay Area and MTC and locally have rolled out their new Clipper transit card and Visa contactless payment, uh, e-payment on transit has having a little problems, but it's a start. And I think one might look at Singapore, which has rolled out credit card payments. Last year I was in Singapore. I was asking a friend there that do they take credit cards? And then they said no, they don't. I said, oh. So I went to the station. The station, oh yeah, we take credit cards. So I took the card, tapped it, boom, got in. Now, as a tourist, you're probably paying a lot more because you're not tapping into any potential senior discounts or other discounts that might be available to me. But because it's so easy, you'll use it. So I come home, I see on my credit card statement whatever the fare was, $2, $3, $4. That was fine because it was easy. And I think one should also just start looking at easy payment systems. And it doesn't even have to be credit cards. The Mexico City system of buying a transit card at every station, and you put in whatever amount you want, and you get a card. And that card is essentially cash. And you really don't care about discounts because the fares are so cheap, like 25 pesos or 50 pesos a ride. And that card, you can actually hand it to the person behind you or somebody else, and they can use the card right behind you. So there are a lot of things that people in the world are doing that are very simple, and one should just kind of look at all those systems and see how we can move to increase ridership.
Thank you. Yeah, so London was the first to really look at this. So I don't know if you can see it, but on the table here, I have a collection of cards. These are all transit cards. So I was holding up Mexico City while you were speaking. Here's the Clipper card. That's what I use. Boston, London, etc. Each of these systems is $2 billion at least. So after I don't have the most recent statistic, but I think in 2021, after 20 years of the Clipper program, less than 11% of the Bay Area had a Clipper card for $2 billion. So we could have given everybody a debit card with 50 bucks on it and gotten a better deal, and something that moved additional goals as well. These are all made by the same company. All these payment systems are all made by the same company, and they're kind of not interoperable by design because the transit agencies all want to do their own thing. And of course, the company, the bonuses of the executives are based on change orders. So they love it when we customize things, right? So wouldn't it be great if I could use if it's not going to be debit and credit card, I want to be able to use my Clipper card in Los Angeles, right? Why can't I tap my Clipper card in Los Angeles, right? And the answer is because all these systems are custom. They're billion-dollar systems that are custom that can't be reused anywhere. And because they're $2 billion, here's another equity issue. It locks out all of the smaller agencies. The smaller agencies, until we came along, had literally no way to take debit and credit cards because there was no product for them on the market unless they did something like this. And these big guys, they want $2 billion. They don't want to work with an agency that has 2 buses. So the way that transit, to your point, Commissioner, the way that transit, it's a very small market. There are only about 4,000 companies in the whole United States. 50% of all the trips and transactions in the United States are one agency, and that's New York City. Right? So that should really give you, I come from Chicago and I grew up taking transit all the time, and I love the subway system, but it should give you some perspective about how we think about transit and think of it as a business here in the United States, right? So that's the statistic about New York, but then we have 4,000 agencies, 928 of which are big and the rest of whom are small. So this is an industry that has decided that's already small, that has decided to split itself further by making sure that all of the subsystems, including payment, are custom. So what goes to the 928, which is where all the vendors go, every component, every tech stack of the technology is custom, right? I think bespoke is good for suits, not for technology, right? That's one of my taglines. But the very fact that they're doing that precludes the remaining 3,000 agencies from having anything. So it's not just payments. One of the things that we're doing is we working with our Department of General Services, recently released some hardware and software so that agencies can produce their schedules in real time. Some of you may have heard of GTFS. GTFS is the data standard that agencies can use to publish their schedules, right? And all Google and Apple are doing, and this saves transit agencies billions of dollars, all Google and Apple are doing is going to every transit agency's website and scraping that data in that exact format. They're not doing anything special. They wrote the trip planning software, and they just use your data. So you as an agency don't exist unless you're on Google Maps. So we spend a lot of time helping agencies. That's my first 5 years before we really did payments. We were working on helping agencies get religion about GTFS. But even better than publishing your schedule is telling people in real time, because who's running their schedule? Something always happens. What you want in your rural area is you want to know if that bus is running 3 minutes early. You really want to know. You want that little transit agency to be able to tell you that the bus is running early, right? So that's called GTFS real time. And so that compares the published schedule based on a router that's on the bus where the bus actually is to give you a prediction that you see in Google and Apple Maps, right? Until we started along these discussions, there was no standalone product to produce GTFS real time. That's the truth. So these transit agencies literally could not do it. There was no product for them to do it. They could get it if they were able to buy that service bundled up with analytics and some other stuff that these vendors have to sell the big agencies in order to make money. Right? So you get the fact that the transit agencies are doing bespoke is a really big problem for them as well as for us. Right? So we really need them to get to work together. And in California, we worship at the altar of local control, and I love local control, but some things we can standardize, right? We can have local control, but we still all use our iPhones, right? Some things should be, I think, standardized so that we can save this industry and so that we can make things interoperable, especially for people that, want to use transit. Transit can be really great. It's not magic. But the places that do it well do it because they all talk to each other and they agree about a bunch of stuff. So I can't make them, and I don't want to make them as the state. That's not our job. But it sure would be better if we could get more things like this going, in my opinion.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, there's your bill
Thank you.
proposal, Member Acevedo. Okay, I want to be mindful. I want to go next with Member Huerta and then Member Iwasaki.
Hello, thank you so much for the amazing presentation. I just had a few quick questions. Under some requirements, I saw California issued driver's license or ID card. And I just wanted to ask, does that include the AB60 driver's license for undocumented people?
Yes.
Oh, okay, cool. And then do you have to be a US citizen or resident to receive this type of service?
No. So I mentioned that there was something on login.gov that we could talk about. So to some extent, this depends on how you're going to, which kind of discount you're going to get and which eligibility verifier you're going to use. If you want to use age, we send you through login.gov because that's the best source that we have. You can be in the federal login.gov database without a social security number. And the way that you can do that is you can take your driver's license, and many states issue driver's licenses, including California, without requiring a social security number, right? Because it's crazy. Like, what does it have to do with citizenship? And many of people, anyway, I could go on. But you can go to any US post office and set up your login.gov account by showing your driver's license. That's all you need, right? You have to verify that piece of information, and the post office will take it. Then there still remains the question of, are folks in that situation comfortable being in a federal database that way? There are many people that are in them like that already. So it's a question of trust, which is a big problem right now. But if you're using the VA because you're a veteran to verify, you're just using, however you got the VA account in the first place.
Thank you. And then the last thing I just wanted to highlight, and I'm glad that at the end of your presentation, there was mention of kind of like the mobility wallet work that you're involved in the LA region. I did want to highlight that the San Joaquin Council of Governments, through a CARB Sustainable Transportation Equity Project, did pilot something similar to having different modes of transit as part of it was a prepaid card that they assigned to people, and that prepaid card gave them access to transit, car share, bike share, Uber, and Lyft. And then that was integrated into an app called Vamos Mobility. It's still active. And it connects all the regional transit in San Joaquin County. So it's really great to hear the work that's already being done and what you're looking to do next. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Huerta. Member Iwasaki?
Thank you for the great presentation and just giving all of us great responses to our questions so we have a fuller understanding of the need that the program is trying to meet and the great work that it's been doing. I have a bunch of questions, but for the sake of time, I'm just going to try to focus on one. I am sorry, I kind of missed when you talked a little bit about what the funding and continuation of this program is currently relying on. Would you mind reiterating that? I'm sorry.
Sure. So initially we were grant funded through a Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Award. So thank you, CTC. We were one of the first grants given. And then the legislature gave us a 3-year limited term budget. And so we're putting in a budget change request to continue the program. And we'll put it it would go into the 27-28 budget cycle. And we'd need the Department of Finance to approve it, but would really need the legislature to approve it. It was the legislature that limited it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Just to follow up on that, was that 3-year limited term, did it come with any potential extension options at the end, or was just 3 years and then we'll talk about it?
No, it was 3 years, and then we'll talk about it and show us show us the improvements that you've done. And honestly, when I'm talking to Department of Finance, that's really hard to prove, right? Because we're not talking about very many agencies. And the way that state government understands transit is by talking to the big guys, because the big guys all have lobbyists, right? LA Metro has a lobbyist, the MTC has a lobbyist. Most of the transit agencies don't have a lobbyist, and they're not really represented in these discussions, right? But they count, right? They're vital to their communities, and they're providing, lifeline services, but they don't really have that kind of lobbying voice for their budgets or for efficiency and stuff like that. So I would say that those are the agencies that we benefit the most because they don't have an alternative.
I'll chime in real quick if Jillian doesn't mind. As somebody who represents a small agency, which is on the cusp of being a medium-sized agency, we've done a lot of innovation in this area, and I'm very proud of that. But I'm going to be really upfront. It would not have been possible without Cal ITP. I want people to understand that. We don't have the resources that the big transportation agencies have. And the fact of the matter is that we actually probably are a little more staffed on technology than a lot of the other smaller agencies around us. And I will still reiterate, we couldn't have done it without the assistance of Cal ITP.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you. I'll just end with a maybe question to the committee staff. If this is something we can discuss either at a subcommittee or at a future committee, if this committee has purview to draft a letter of support to the legislature, just an advisory letter of support for instance, inclusion of this program into a budget change for the 27-28 budget cycle. We just would be very curious about what options there are for us to publicly show support, if that's the whole committee, members of the committee, et cetera. Just put that out there for a future conversation, please.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, if we can get an answer from staff, I would love to put a letter of support together from the EAC. But
Thank
not
you,
sure if we're allowed.
Yeah, thank you.
Wanted to jump in here. Do you have any legislators that are advocating on your behalf? Anyone that is looking to sponsor?
No,
No.
we don't. Caltrans doesn't lobby.
Okay.
Any conversations
Well,
with
I
Blakespeare?
think we need to make some kind of a connection here, because this is too big of a thing to let just go away. So, anyway.
Thank you. And then I know Chair Falcon had some comments also before we get more in depth into the
I
conversation.
can just, Member Iwasaki, I just want to make sure I think what we can do is explore options for how the committee can support Cal ITP and the work that Jillian and her team are doing. I'm not sure if we can, if the committee can draft a letter of support directly for a unknown budget change proposal that may not materialize on behalf of the administration. So I'm happy to work with you and with the committee and with the staff to make sure we figure out how to support it. And I'm glad to hear it. Right. So let's figure out ways to do that. I might also suggest that maybe this is a conversation for a subcommittee in a different way, topically, to maybe focus and refine what you might want to draw out and support. And that might just take a little bit of time, and we'll follow up in debriefs. Great. Thanks. And we'll keep Jillian and her team on the loop.
All right. Chair Falcon, you had a comment?
Yes, thank you. And thank you for the presentation. Obviously, it's compelling. It has stimulated a lot of conversation and questions. And I would say that Commissioner Tiffany represented us very well in his comments, and appreciate our Chief Deputy, his answer to what can we do as an agency. We're limited, right? Given exactly what Allison, how she explained it. And so, there's power in the local and what they're experiencing, even with the big four or major ones. They're all, I would say, grappling with budget pressures operationally and trying to capture, right, funding through their fare boxes. And so even though we're talking about the disadvantage of smaller agencies not having the lobbying might all together, their voice, and they talk to their legislators. And this is a major issue, I would say, for those that really care about transportation in the legislature and throughout our region. And so if my question, I do have a question, but I wanted to just kind of put that out there, is that there is power in the regions and the local voices, and it's because there is a huge need. And my esteemed colleague likes to say that, one size doesn't fit all, and it's true, but what you are suggesting in terms of the ability for people to pay for their transit service, you're suggesting really filling an important gap there, especially for a growing population. And we're going to talk about it after this presentation. The fastest growing population is those folks over 65. Yeah. Right. And so, and a lot of them are unbanked and they still don't trust technology.
Right.
So I do have a question though, talking about your year that you have left, essentially, what does that scope look like? So now that you have this pilot and that you've done a lot of this work, what is your scope for the next?
Well, so RE2 is working on this distinct project, right, which is a mobility wallet through a grant with a specific set of agencies. In terms of payment and GTFS, right, helping agencies get onto Google and Apple Maps and helping them get onto open payments, we're no longer really a startup in that form. I mean, we now just chunk it out. If an agency is interested, they call us and we help them. I mean, we do everything. We help you write your scope of work. If you don't have staff, we'll help you implement it, blah, 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 blah. Pretty white glove service. So we have 27 agencies so far that have all of our products, right? They're fully on open payments. They have benefits. Michael and MST are an example of that. So 27 agencies have gone through us directly to get to open payments. We've worked with every agency in the state on GTFS, Google and Apple Maps, even the MTC, right? It's very complicated. So we just kind of, for the year, we just will be responsive to any agency that asks us to do that for any one of our products, right? GTFS or payments or benefits. In the next year, we're also doing research and development. We're sort of a real product organization because I come from a product background. So we're doing research to fill another gap, which is the first generation of gaps we're working on now, right? But we figured out what the next generation of gaps in transit are. And they are the following: automated passenger counting. There is no standard for passenger counting. So passenger counting by transit agencies in the United States, I would always take with a bit of a grain of salt because they're all custom systems. And the way that most of the small transit agencies count passengers is the customer goes up the steps and the bus driver pushes a button on the $29,000 cash fare box. That's how we count passengers, right? So that needs to be automated, and we can. So we're hoping to have a working prototype so that when we leave, somebody else from Caltrans can work with the Department of General Services to procure that thing and get it onto a state purchasing list and open it nationally so small agencies have access to standardized APC. The other one would be CAD AVLs, computer-aided dispatch, automatic vehicle location. There's a big difference between I need to call you to reroute your bus or come back or something, and turn-by-turn instructions, which is like what Muni and the big guys have, right? The bus drivers are looking at a screen that's telling them exactly how to route. So that continuum is referred to as computer-aided dispatch. And so that is not standardized either. And there are probably chunks in it. We think of we try to create Lego, right? Where everybody has the same Lego set, but they just build different things, right? So there are probably some components of dispatch that we could eke out so that the small agencies have a product that's standardized that they could use, because they don't have anything right now, right? In dispatch, the way they dispatch is it's all by phone, right? And if you're in one of the 12 parts of the state that don't have any internet, really don't have reliable internet, and won't even after the middle mile network, that includes basically all of the tribes, but also very large portions of California don't have internet, right? And this is a huge problem when we have disasters. right? Because our paratransit providers, we really need them to be evacuating people or whatever, right? And if you don't have internet, then what? You're stuck with radio, and that has its own issues. Like, that system needs to be modernized and standardized. So APC, CAT-AVL, basic internet connectivity. My team, we were so tired of, there was a transit agency that really wanted to work with us in an area that didn't have internet. And so they were pretty frosty about a state agency working with them. And so we borrowed a Starlink, one of those Elon Musk satellites, and my team literally went up and bolted it onto one of their buses to show them, to demonstrate how this would all work if they had internet. Oh, and by the way, then they also had internet, and they just completely turned around. They were like so excited because it helps them in all sorts of other things, right? So now we help them get some grant money, so they have Starlinks on all of their buses. But we should not be relying on Starlink alone. That's the only vendor in this space right now. That's right. We need alternatives, and California is big enough to make sure that there are alternatives so that we're not, in a monopoly situation. So CAT-AVL, automatic passenger counting, basic internet connectivity, transit signal priority. So we really want the buses to not be stuck in traffic, right? And so that means upgrading the signals to really, upgrading and then programming the signals to think about, to notice transit, and also peds and bikes, by the way, right? There's not really there are no standards in traffic signals either. They're all unique, and they should be standardized. And they don't recognize pedestrians and cyclists. That's alone is a huge problem, but they also don't recognize transit. So if we standardize that then and put it on state purchasing schedules, typically what happens is that smaller parts of the state will buy off of the state purchasing schedules, because the act of procurement is expensive and time consuming, and they don't have a procurement staff. I mean, some of these agencies, they don't have a planning staff. They don't have a procurement officer. The general manager may drive the bus. How are they going to run a complicated procurement? So one way to solve that is our method, which is get the state buying those things for you on a standardized basis so that you can just pull it down because it's already been competed, right? And then we also open all those contracts nationally so that we get some kind of economy of scale, and small agencies in other states can buy the same thing too. So transit signal priority. And then what's coming at us is, if we are really going to move to zero emissions, right? That's kind of a question now because of what's happened federally. But we should, right? Like, everything's showing us that we need to move to zero emissions, right? The way that you fuel a vehicle for zero emissions is really different than using gas, right? You have to start thinking about when your battery's going to run out, and you have to think about where you get the hydrogen fuel, right? So it really needs a network response. And you need to build all of that thinking into your schedule. You have to build refueling, and what happens if I have a refueling issue on this route, right? How do I plan for that? So we need software to help us with EV charging, right? EV charging management. And it's also, electricity is more expensive at certain times of the day, right? So the transit operators are operating in this incredibly complicated environment where they're trying to keep their costs down on the one hand, but they also need to make sure that they can get gas when they need it. Right. And they're all doing this within their own small agency because they don't work together, and the state hasn't figured out a way to help them work together. So those are the 5 products in our next generation that we're really trying to do research on this year. And I think in the case of automated passenger counting, we'll have a prototype done before the end of the year. And for the other ones, maybe we'll have some really great white papers and some initial research.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
And
I saw member Armis Kelly. Thank you. And I'll be quick. I really, I'm so happy that you were going to bring that whole Garmin kind of thing, to be able to have GPS. But again, last night when I was on the Gold Runner, which is like the big new
Yeah,
thing,
great.
right? I was really super excited, but I had a new driver and his phone was not working.
Right.
And so he said to me, he goes, "Oh man," and I'm sitting in the front, and I said, "Well, my phone works, but don't worry, I know the area, so go this way," and I literally got him onto the road, and but that brought that point back, to the fact that he said they don't provide that, and I said, "They don't provide you internet?" And he's like, "No." He says, "I have to use my own hotspot." And I said, "So if you don't have, you're riding, then you're like limited if you don't." He goes, "That's why we have a phone charger here." But if I don't have internet access, he goes, and I don't know the route, I don't know where to go. So I'm glad that you gave me kind of like a heads up because I got it from here. But in Bishop and all the other places that we've been to in California, there are so many places where that's just not even heard of. So I think that's a great thing that you're doing. But on another note, for us as a smaller community organization and understanding environmental justice and the equity model, maybe the Caltrans cannot do that, like the legislative part. But I think that a good step is to take it to the grassroots level and have them advocate for you, because for us as an organizer, I think if I had more information on that, I could possibly bring it to our own jurisdictions and have them say, hey, you're looking for a bill, this would be the one to jump on. So thank you.
Yeah, no, for sure.
I mean, I think my response to that would be, please, 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 in your position as, advocates and in your communities, look up Bank On and look for the Bank On advocacy groups in California. And maybe there was the one that close to you. If you're going to regular events where you're, participating as an advocate or whatever, about community groups, get them to meet the folks from Bank On and start spreading the word about safe bank accounts. Because I have another slide that I could have used that shows the reasons why people are and underbanked in California. And it's very emotional. The main reason is that many Americans, lots of the folks that fall into that category, cannot afford the minimum balance, right? And if you fall below the minimum balance, you're going to get a below the minimum balance charge. And if you start going below that, then you start having all the overdraft issues. So even a $2 transit fare can put you below the minimum balance, right? That's just silly, right? They don't need, I mean, that's because of the way banks are regulated, but not, there are other, even the big banks have these alternative products. And we just need to make sure that everybody that's willing to hear about that is, can try, right? And the second reason why customers remain unbanked is that they don't trust banks. And a lot of that, if you dig into the data, is because they got talked into getting a bank account, because they needed something, and they didn't understand that it came with a minimum balance. And they got below the minimum balance, and every month the bank was taking $15 or $25 out of their bank account, and they wound up with no money, right? Not understanding these really complicated rules is going to make you not trust things, right? So we need to make sure that they get the right product, and we need to make sure that the way that they get the product is with somebody that they trust, right?
Yeah.
And that's not something that state agencies can do. But I think where the state can be helpful, especially for folks who are undocumented, is California was the first state to decouple residency from legal residency from driving, because it's preposterous. You couldn't, you could not necessarily documented, but doesn't mean you're poor. You can afford insurance, right? But we're basically preventing the population from buying insurance, which is insane, right? We did that in a way that you can't get the data, right? And that's very important right now. And overnight, after that legislation passed, practically millions of Californians came into the system because they trusted us to do it, right? And they still have their driver's licenses, or they get their state IDs, right? So I think that trust in California is something that we could bank on.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm gonna move us along because we're now 15 minutes late for our next presentation. I want to be mindful of the next presenters. So we're gonna move on. Thank you so much, by the way. Thank you all. It was a very, very fruitful conversation, and I'm looking forward to supporting more. So staff, I'm gonna hit you up. All right, so we're gonna go to tab 8, California Master Plan for Aging, transportation related initiatives. And so tab 8 is an informational presentation on the Master Plan for Aging from Jackie Tompkins with the Department of on Aging, who will be joining us virtually, and co-chairs of the Transportation Subcommittee for the Disability and Aging Community Living Advisory Committee, DACLAG. Awesome. Warren Cushman and EAC member Michelle Rousey will be presenting. So let's take it away.
And we're bringing Warren Cushman, my co-chair of DACLAG Transportation Sub.
All right. Welcome.
And I believe Jackie's giving the first part of the presentation and she's on for this one.
Hi, everyone. This is Jackie Tompkins with the California Department of Aging. Wanted to confirm, I'm happy to bring up my slides or if those were going to be brought up for me. What is the organizer's preference?
They are up, and so you usually see the next slide, and they'll help you out with the moving along the slides.
Okay, my apologies. I'm not seeing them on my end.
Oh.
I don't know if others who are joining virtually are also seeing them.
Yeah, we can see them on our end, so want to make sure.
Let me see.
Maybe push at the top where it says commission presenter screen. Go to that.
Okay. Okay, there we go. Oh, perfect. I know I was added as a panelist because I joined on the public side. So now I can see them. Thank you so much for working through the logistics of supporting us participating virtually today. So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jackie Tompkins. I work at the California Department of Aging as the Master Plan for Aging Project Director. And on the call with me today is also a colleague of mine, Anna Acton. So we'll be able to facilitate any discussion or questions and answers that you have following today's presentation. So on behalf of the department and California's Master Plan for Aging, thank you for inviting us to speak about the plan, especially in May. May is Older Californians Month, where we are celebrating older Californians, all the contributions that they provide to our state. So again, a big thank you for having us present today specifically on California's Master Plan for Aging. So I recognize that this is probably a very diverse group, and some of you on the call or even in the room today might have varying degrees of knowledge or awareness about California's Master Plan for Aging. So I'll just start with a little bit about California's Master Plan for Aging is essentially our state's blueprint or roadmap or guide or strategic vision of how we can prepare California's systems, services, and partnerships to really be age and disability friendly. And if you go to the next slide, I'll demonstrate why this is important to California and all of us in the room and virtually. So here in California, we are experiencing and also anticipating a dramatic growth in the number of older adults who call California their home. We're seeing that by the year even 2030, and that used to sound so long ago, that nearly 25% of our state's population is going to be an older adult. So that's about 10 million Californians. People who are older adults are also growing more significantly in numbers compared to those who are age 0 to 17. So that's also a shift in our state's demographics. And even beyond just the sheer numbers of increases that we're seeing in the older adult population, we acknowledge that California is a richly diverse state. So we have different cultures, preferences, and backgrounds. And so we need to have services and programs to support older adults who are older adults today, but also thinking about this as a California plan. How can we create systems, services, and processes to help those who will be older adults in the future? So if you go to the next slide, I'll talk about how we got to having a large strategic plan within our state called the Master Plan for Aging. So back in 2019, Governor Newsom signed an executive order that called upon our state to build out this roadmap to, create an age-friendly state. This executive order was further reinforced by having legislation enacted that called upon the California Health and Human Services to lead this effort, and also for the California Department of Aging to be a principal partner in developing and implementing the Master Plan for Aging. In addition to developing the plan, we are mandated through legislation to also do an annual report to the legislature to describe the progress of California's Master Plan for Aging. And let's go to the next slide. I like to think of California's master plan for all of us. Again, it is designed to support those who are older adults, those who are working with older adults, whether that's in that direct care workforce or maybe serving as a family caregiver. We'll talk about it on a subsequent slide, but when you look at the collective goals of California's master plan for aging, it is also about families, communities, future older adults. And on this, the last picture on this slide is kind of sharing my personal story. I'm a family caregiver for an individual with a developmental disability, my son, who will be an older adult one day. And so our master plan for aging thinks about people like me who are family caregivers, and also thinks about people who will age with their disability or who may age into a disability. So all of us in this room today, I like to think of us as a master plan for aging champions. So if I leave you with one thing, I hope you take that with you, that you are part of California's master plan for aging. So let's talk about the goals within California's master plan for aging. Next slide. So our current plan is grounded in 5 what we call bold goals. We have goal 1, which is housing for all ages and stages. And I will share with you that I think while we definitely have elements of addressing housing, homelessness, prevention, this is also a goal area where we look at building age and disability friendly communities. So you'll see that some of our transportation related goals, our initiatives fall under this goal 1 too, because it's about like that community building, and transportation is a key piece of aging well. We have goal 2, which is our health reimagined. This is where you would find several of our initiatives that might deal with more of healthcare related topics, Medicare, Medicaid, etc. And goal 3 is about inclusion and equity, not isolation. This is where you might find some social connection goals, goals related to behavioral health and inclusion in the community. And goal 4 is about caregiving that works. Again, this looks at the direct care workforce, but also the family caregiver lens. How can we provide training, resources, education to help build the knowledge, the confidence, and the skills of the individuals who serve our older adults and people with disabilities on a daily basis, and essentially provide that backbone support that is needed to ensure that our priority populations under the master plan are really supported in the setting of their choice. And then goal 5 is about affording aging. When we look at topics related to food security or how do we afford long-term services and supports, those areas are also captured in goal 5. So we have these 5 bold goals in California's master plan for aging, and we have initiatives that support these 5 bold goals. And what makes California's master plan for aging unique is that we're able to be responsive to changing factors, resources, information, and be able to essentially refresh the initiatives that are underneath each of these goal areas on in the past we've been able to do it every 2 years. The frequency of that could change, but the point is California's master plan for aging stays dynamic, stays flexible, is not static, designed to sit on a shelf, but rather be able to evolve with community needs. Going to the next slide, I want to share with all of you, when we look at those topics that fall under the goal areas of, housing, transportation, healthcare, caregiving, all of that requires a whole of government and a whole of society approach. So while the California Department of Aging is a key principal or principal partner in implementing the master plan, we lean into partners across our Health and Human Services Agency and across the administration, including partners at CalSTA, partners in our housing department, healthcare, social services, and we also have many philanthropic partners who have invested millions of dollars to also support the goals of California's Master Plan for Aging. So again, to achieve those 5 bold goals, it does require whole of government and whole of society approach. Going to the next slide. California's Master Plan for Aging is also grounded in robust stakeholder engagement. And we're going to talk a little bit about specifically the Disability and Aging Community Living Advisory Committee, DACLAC, a little bit later. But I wanted to share with you that we do have 6 stakeholder advisory committees that look at issues related to Alzheimer's, research, equity, elder and disability justice, who meet on a regular basis to help inform the implementation of California's Master Plan for Aging. It's really important to the master plan that we bring diverse perspectives, lived experience, as well as subject matter expertise to the initiatives that are developed, and then further how those initiatives are implemented. And collectively with these advisory committees, and our Aging and Lived Experience Advisory Board, we have nearly 150 community members contributing to California's Master Plan for Aging. So if you look at this list and you see a group that's maybe of interest to you, I do encourage you, these are, aside from the Aging and Lived Experience Advisory Board, these are public meetings. You can join to attend as a public member, to listen to committee discussions, and then maybe in the future could also apply to be on a committee. We just onboarded a number of new committee members throughout these 6 groups earlier this year. So very excited to bring, new perspectives and diverse membership to these committees. So going to the next slide, what also makes California's master plan unique, and we hear this from other states, is how we've been able to bridge aging and disability together. This is an area that many states are also trying to integrate into their own master or multi-sector plans for aging. And we've been able to do that with California's plan, recognizing that, again, there might be some, unique needs and characteristics of both these community groups, but we focus on where are their common priorities. There are many older adults that are people with disabilities. People, again, can age with or into a disability, and both of these community groups experience discrimination, stereotypes, and bias. So through the master plan, we try to identify initiatives and strategies to really support some of the common priorities that we see. And that could be, affordable housing, accessible housing, and transportation. So when we see that there are common access barriers, we know that California's Master Plan for Aging can support, again, a number of individuals in our community who call California their home. Next slide. What I want to share with you on this slide is many, again, of these issues that we have within California's Master Plan for Aging require us to have multiple strategies to address them. We're looking at really complex, system-wide topics that, again, might not be housed just within one department or one agency, but do require that cross-sector collaboration. So, for example, when we think about the long-term services and supports that someone needs to live safely and connected and in dignity in the community of their choice with the long-term services and supports, we look at it from a multi-pronged approach. So we look at the navigation factor. Do people know firsthand where to get the services? And once they, are connected to one resource or outlet, are they connected to a variety of resources from that one entry point? Because that can be often, challenging and frustrating to an individual to have services and resources so piecemealed and not connected and be person-centered. What we also look at as it relates to long-term services and supports is the access component. Do our California communities have the resources and services in place? And also not only are they in place, but are they culturally responsive to the diverse community that is in that respective region? Under the workforce component, we know that this is a core factor of the collective work we do? Do we have individuals in, again, that caregiving workforce, the direct care workforce, and throughout, our private and public sector who understand the unique needs of older adults and people with disabilities? And then when you think about this whole collection as that financing piece, how do we, collectively support the affordability or the financing of the services, the supports, the workforce that, individuals here in California need? So I just use this as an example to illustrate that, again, we take a topic or an issue, and because this is designed to be a comprehensive plan, it's not just going to warrant one solution or one strategy. We have to tackle it from multiple angles. And so if you go to the next slide, that same topic or that same principle applies to what you'll see in our MPA, Master Plan for Aging, transportation related initiatives. So I think on the next slide are the initiatives that we have in our current plan. So we do understand and recognize the importance of having affordable, accessible, and reliable transportation. Transportation allows somebody to connect to the services that they need, allow for that social connection. And we also know that transportation, even AARP identifies it as one of its 8 domains of community livability. So it is an important factor to our communities and to the priority populations of California's Master Plan for Aging. So I just have them listed here, some of the things that as a state we're working on together in partnership with our transportation agencies. So here they are: Elevate California's Transportation Commission's Needs Assessment, include recommendations in the final Transit Transformation Task Force report. And I think this next one aligns with the previous agenda item about streamlined benefits, eligibility process, standardized definitions, and facilitate easier access to discounts through the California Integrated Travel Project. Next slide. We also have completed and published a home and community-based services gap analysis, which I'll talk about momentarily, and a supporting initiative of completing that analysis is looking at the gaps and creating a roadmap to help close those gaps and increase access to home and community-based services. And this last one here today is also an initiative, being able to share out the findings of that home and community-based services gap analysis to transportation partners and others who need to know about the information. So we're going to talk a little bit more about the what we call HCBS gap analysis. So going to the next slide. So there was a 2-pronged approach when it came to doing this home and community-based services analysis. And home and community-based services are essentially services and supports that, again, older adults and people with disabilities need to perform their activities of daily living in the settings of their choice. And I'll go through some of those on a subsequent slide. But here in California, we took a 2-prong approach. The Department of Aging looked at a non-Medi-Cal home and community-based services gap analysis, and our colleagues at the California Department of Healthcare Services, who oversees our Medi-Cal system, did a similar analysis, but looked at it from the Medi-Cal lens, what is being offered through that public service benefit. So let's look at what we examined across the state. It was important for us, so if we go to the next slide, it was important for us within the state to understand what services and supports are currently being offered in communities, because that's the first step in being able to create a plan to close the gaps, to understand what is out there, what are the community needs, and then take action to, again, close those gaps and support greater access. So we, again, looked at that multi-prong approach when we looked at home and community-based services, how we organize the different services, included, are there caregiver supports? Are there communication and referral processes in place? Health-related services and support, housing, safety, social inclusion, employment, and economic support. And then the one we're going to focus on today is about transportation and what we learned from the gap analysis related specifically to transportation. Share some of those findings on the next slide. Sorry. So this is what we learned as it relates during our home and communities gap analysis. We learned throughout the state of California, transportation services vary. There's challenges with paratransit services. Some of the service providers in the community are unaware of accessible transportation services that they might be able to refer people to. Individuals in the community are not aware of their eligibility and how to access services. Lack of data. This other component about even driver training and education about, again, how do we best support older adults and people with disabilities navigating their community. We also heard that there's a lack of accessible and coordination transportation providers. There's unique issues in our rural communities. That is also a concern. People spoke to the fact that there's limited funding earmarked for older adults and people with disabilities to have the affordable and accessible and reliable services that they need. And then also just the gaps in service coordination grants, vouchers, supplemental transportation services, and paratransit services. So this information is really helpful because it was important for us to, again, have a baseline understanding of what's available in California in terms of services and supports as it relates to transportation and other home and community-based services. But then also allowed us to hear directly from consumers and people's perceptions of transportation challenges that they're experiencing. So it was a mix of, some quantitative data, but also hearing perspectives with the qualitative data. So now we're working in our state to think about, again, how can we create a roadmap to close these access gaps? I'm going to pause there, and I think I'm transitioning to talk a little bit more about DACLAC, our Disability and Aging Community Living Advisory Committee, before I turn it over to Michelle and Warren, who are the members of that committee. So I think on the next slide, it gives you, maybe go one more slide just for time. So again, the Disability and Aging Community Living Advisory Committee that we call DACLAC essentially is one of the committees that helps guide the implementation of California's Master Plan for Aging. So the purpose of this committee is to advance community living, inclusion, and integration across California, and to ensure the involvement of individuals with disabilities, older adults, and other partners who provide services or represent consumers. So DACLAC helps to inform the Master Plan for Aging, but it also helps to inform other state entities, whether that's the California Health and Human Services Agency, and even others on disability inclusion practices, community living. And on the next slide, we wanted to just give you a little bit of history and background on DACLAC. So here in California, DACLAC was formally referred to as the Olmsted Advisory Committee. And this original name came from the U.S. Supreme Court's decision in 1999 that affirmed that people with disabilities have the right to receive services in the most integrated community setting appropriate for their needs. And this decision really elevated the principles of choice, independence, and inclusion. So we had the Olmsted Advisory Committee was established here in California in 2005. And when we released the Master Plan for Aging in 2020, 2021, which is kind of that early 2021 timeframe, it became one of the core Master Plan for Aging committees guiding the implementation, and we renamed the Olmsted Committee to this broader DACLAC, and from there we established a transportation specific focused subcommittees. And so from the beginning, transportation has been identified as one of the biggest barriers to community living. So it's really important that we not only talk about this issue at DACLAC, but we have a dedicated subcommittee. And I know there's members here today who serve on that subcommittee who are just going to talk a little bit about their role and recommendations they have uplifted to the state as it relates to transportation related matters. So I'll turn it over to Michelle and Warren, and then I know that Anna and I are here to answer questions that you might have about the master plan for aging. So as they're going through their recommendations, I definitely encourage you all to think about your respective roles and ways to uplift recommendations and where there might be opportunities to align and coordinate. So thank you all so much, and I'll be available for questions following Michelle and Warren.
Thank you, Jackie. I'm sorry. It's okay. I'll figure it out. I'm Michelle Rousey. I'm a member of the DACLAC, which is the Disability and Aging Community Living Advisory Committee. I've been a member not from its inception when it was the Olmsted Committee, but a few years after. So I've been a member of the committee even after the name change. Currently was chair 2 years ago, for 2 years. I was chair of the subcommittee for 2 years of the transportation sub, and now I'm co-chairing it with Warren Cushman. And we are appointed to the body by the Secretary of the California Human Health and Human Services that began advising the California Master Plan on Aging in 2020. Once the plan was created, the Transportation Subcommittee was established in 2021. The committee has made a number of recommendations in regard to transit transportation task force, the State Transportation System Needs Assessment Report, and the TNC Access for All program, and benefits and discounts for transportation for older adults and people with disabilities. It's a wonderful group, and encourage people to, if you want to be part of the committee or the subs, we welcome you to join. Warren? Mic's right in front of you.
Yep, subtle.
Down a little bit. There you go.
Got it. Okay, hello, everybody. My name is Warren Cushman, and I work at Community Resources for Independent Living, an independent living center based in Hayward. And Michelle and I served together on this transportation subcommittee as co-chairs. And this year we are looking at a number of things. One of them is what we heard earlier, CalITP and the work that CalITP is doing. We care about that work, and we had a conversation about it already in our subcommittee. And we really want to invest in that conversation and see how it benefits seniors and people with disabilities. We're interested in a seamless system that makes sense for people with disabilities in terms of payment, whether it be credit card or otherwise. And we really do believe that Jillian made sense in terms of tackling this issue with energy towards essentially an integrated system. Right now we have, I think I heard her say, over 200 transit agencies in the state of California, everybody doing their own thing. That's chaos for people with disabilities. We don't want that. So we're hopefully going to see more energy towards an integrated system. Another thing we are interested in is there's some energy towards sidewalks and interest in looking at sidewalk improvements and bike improvements and wayfinding and a number of other issues that relate to those kinds of things. I heard earlier there was a good conversation about signage and wayfinding. We're excited about that. We want to be a part of that. We have challenges in our community having to do with scooters and bike lanes and other kinds of processes. And we also want to work with other folks in that space so that we can all travel together. Another challenge we've we're looking at is the Caltrans space. We understand that Caltrans is embarking on a new ADA initiative. And this, we have not had the pleasure of having Caltrans come to our subcommittee as of yet, but we know it's on the way, probably within the next month or two. And we want to have a really good conversations with Caltrans about, how we understand the ADA process and how the new ADA transition initiative is going to work throughout the state. Coordination is really important there also with the different ADA districts, how they operate, and how the different districts interact with each other and with the state, and how we relate to people with disabilities and all of that. So that is pretty much what I have. Michelle, you can certainly pick up on what I may have missed.
Okay, no problem, Vern. We're also looking at long-term budget issues. In the previous years, we were successfully encouraged the SB 1121 State Local Transportation Needs Assessment to consider accessible transportation. However, in the report, was not able to complete the cost assessment for accessible transportation. We believe the cost assessment should be completed as soon as possible, as the lack of information regarding costs is a barrier to short and long-term improvements. And I something that we were talking about when we were doing prep is how we would like this body to work together with the DACLAC transportation sub, particularly in doing advocacy around the master plan on aging, and how we can bring you guys in to benefit both agencies and both groups to kind of work together on things as we move forward, because we have a lot of crossover with disability and aging, and part of the reason why we brought forward this agenda item today.
Yeah, wow. Thank you so much. I think we should give a shout out to our members. Member Rousey, Warren, thank you so much for being here, and Jackie for a great presentation. I think this presentation was definitely long overdue, and I agree that the needs assessment needs to like quickly get done. So, and addressed. I do want to go to public comment really quick, and then we'll get into conversation. So I have Adina Levin in the room that wants to make a comment.
Adina Levin with Seamless Bay Area. She's actually, she works with us and supports us in our roles as chairs for the DACLEC subcommittee, but she's here as public speaking today.
Thank you. Welcome, Adina.
Adina's awesome.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And it's really great to be connecting the broader work that the Equity Advisory Committee does and the work that the DACLEC Transportation Subcommittee has been doing with respect to transportation in the implementation of the Master Plan for Aging and the intersection of the needs of seniors and people with disabilities in transportation. So as Michelle had said, the area has been supporting the DACLEC subcommittee and supporting the chairs in their work. And I wanted to make a couple of points building on what Michelle and Warren had been speaking about. So one is that the Cal ITP suite of offerings is something that the group has been learning about and making recommendations on. The DACLEC Transportation Subcommittee had originally been organized by the state, and as such, it was not able to advocate, but it is now an independent body with participants that are people with disabilities and people associated with organizations serving seniors and people with disabilities, and is able to do advocacy. So it was very interesting to hear both about what Cal ITP is doing now, doing next, and some of the funding concerns and questions are. And these are things that we can bring back to the subcommittee to talk about what we can do, including advocacy around getting the good things implemented and getting the good things continue to be funded. So that's one. The second is building on what Michelle and Warren were talking about, that funding needs assessment. The HCBS gap analysis was helpful in identifying a number of gaps in this domain relating to transportation. However, with the lack of completion of that SB 1121 needs assessment and cost estimate, it is basically a hard barrier to get any improvement at all done on any of these gaps without any sort of price tag associated with running the system that currently exists and with making any improvements to the system. If you try to, for example, have a bill saying we want to have X improved, the first question is, how much does it cost now? How much would it cost in the future? We don't know. Okay, talk to us later when you have some clue about what the cost implications are. And so the lack of that cost assessment is a real barrier, and that is why the group has already and will advocated for and will continue to advocate for that to be that needs assessment with price tags to be done as soon as possible in order to enable progress to be made on
time has expired.
Analysis. Thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you so much, Adina, for coming forward with those
Can I
comments.
add one thing to what Adina
Yes.
just said?
Go ahead, Member Rousey.
Something that's happened for over 20 years. So, we make new policies around accessible content, but we don't fund them. And so if we don't fund those changes, then they don't happen. And so we sit on them. And that has happened time and time again when it comes to accessible transportation for over 20 years. And
Yes,
we have
thank you
proof
for
of
bringing
that. And
that
that's
up.
something that we've learned in our subcommittee over the last 3 years.
Yeah, that's a great observation. Thank you for that. I know really quick on that point, since I do a lot of advocacy at the state level, I know some legislators just want to push their bills out there without any price tag on it, and it doesn't work that way, right? When it's like being implemented, then everybody's like rushing and figuring out where they're going to get the funding from when it should have come with the price tag from the beginning and the funding mechanism. So yes, definitely good point. So at this time, I do want to highlight that we do need to get out of the room at 5 p.m. and we have one more tab item, but I do want to take comments and questions from our dais. So I see 2 hands up online. We'll start with Member Acevedo. I think you're muted.
Sorry
There you
about that. I'll be really quick with I just have a couple thanks and then a question. So AARP loves the MPA. Thanks for the shout out. We love working with you, Jackie, and your entire team, especially on all these issues that are so important for older adults and their families, not just now, but in the future. Also want to thank DACLAC. I've appeared a couple times in the committee, and I know Nina, my colleague Nina Weiler-Harwell, is very involved with that as well. And I definitely want to give a shout out to support for a needs assessment. We've been involved in a couple legislative efforts that haven't gone very far for some of the issues that Michelle has kind of raised. That kind of falls back into my earlier comments that, there's that Spider-Man meme territory where everyone's pointing a finger to who should be doing what. And no one wants to take necessarily any ownership, and there's no funding involved. And I think that gets to my question for Jackie, which is, okay, sure, funding's an issue. Sure, coordination's an issue. And I'm also going to echo back to my other point earlier today, if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. And one thing I've noticed on the dashboard, which is a thing of beauty, folks should check it out because there's been a lot of great progress that the MPA's done. Transportation's not there. And I'm a little confused because there's been actually reports that have been done over the years that have highlighted key transportation metrics. There was a report in 2025 that had several things that actually identified owners for folks to work on. So there was metrics related to what the CTC, CalSTA, Caltrans, CDA, even CalHHS could work on. And I'm just wondering, why is there no inclusion of some of these metrics that you previously discussed? And just maybe shed a little bit more light on how we can better measure some of our transportation metrics related to the MPA, especially since, if we do find that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow to fund some of this stuff, we're not going to be able to do much with it. We're not going to be effective with it if we don't have measurements and metrics in place.
Thank you, David. And with regards to you're referring to our master plan for aging data dashboard. I do want to thank you for elevating that gap. I know that our data dashboard is a collection of multiple data sources that we get from different MOUs and, coordinated opportunities with other state agencies. So I don't know if I can specifically, and maybe I'll lean into Anna if she knows the answer, but I don't specifically know the why behind that. But we do have a robust research team that I'm happy to inquire and get back to the group. I know that within the data dashboard, we've been also trying to develop like local county level profiles in addition to state level data, being able to support local stakeholders, advocates with understanding what's happening at the local level and thinking there might be some opportunities for some transportation information there. But I do appreciate you elevating that gap to us, and I will definitely speak to our research team. I want to turn over, Anna, if you have any other insights on that piece.
Yeah, thank you, David. Thank you for elevating it. We will take it back to our research team. I also will just note, and would be happy to share this with you. It might be in one of the links on the slide deck, but through the HCBS gap analysis, we do have a digital landscape tool that's county by county that does layer in some transportation services. So we can share that with you. I'm going to take down your name and I'll connect with you and we could share that with you, but we'll take it back. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I wanted to share super briefly too, just on the comment of, state and local work, again, recognizing that you all have unique roles in, your respective communities, is not only do we have like a state master plan for aging, but we also have many local communities that have developed their own local level master plans for aging, where areas such as transportation have been elevated throughout those too. So if you're looking to be more connected to some of the community work, I do encourage you to research if your local, whether it's a county or city, or even sometimes it's both, have local master plans for aging, because that's a great way to get connected too.
Yes, thank you for highlighting that. We're going to go to member Wong.
Yeah, thank you. Great presentation. Aging has a lot of very serious impacts, and some urban areas like San Francisco are aging and probably faster than the state. So there are, obviously impacts on healthcare, Medicare, Social Security, but it's also linked to increasing homelessness among seniors and housing, affording housing. Evictions of seniors are rising. So there's a serious social problems that we have to address. And the interesting thing is seniors are, as they grow in population, will become a very dominant political voting force. So ideally, by voting in the correct people in government, I think funding is a pretty much going to be a political point for their votes. And also, polling shows that most seniors actually want to stay in their own homes and communities. So government can't do it all. And I think part of the study needs to emphasize the village movement in the United States, which is our neighbors forming organizations to help their own neighbors, which is what my group in San Francisco does, Next Village, San Francisco. So that is something that we need to emphasize, that outside of government, I think people can also be empowered to help their own communities. When you look at countries like that have been aging even more rapidly than the United States, like Japan, I think that's kind of a model that we need to look at and see what's happening there. There's a lot of abandoned housing, abandoned towns in Japan, and centralization of the aging in the central cities, and they're trying to create the services to support them. So that might be a model to look at. Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Member Wong.
Can I say a quick note related
Yes,
to
go
that
ahead,
piece?
Jackie.
I also want to, we talked about the broader DACLAC committee that has the transportation committee. We also have a housing subcommittee under DACLAC. So that might be of interest to other members of this group. And I'm glad that you also mentioned Village Movement California. I believe Kate in your San Francisco area is also a DACLAC member. So we are familiar with the Village Movement. And I know even in the Sacramento County area, they're looking under their local master plan to create a similar village model movement. So that seems appropriate in some settings and for some population groups. So thank you, Howard.
There are
Yes,
three
thank you.
subcommittees with the DACLAC. There's long-term supports and services. So that looks at all the services wrapped around Olmsted and the services, and it's really robust, and the advocacy they're doing is really robust too, along with our housing and the transportation stuff. All three are wonderful groups if you're interested in disability under aging.
Thank you for that information. That's awesome. Okay, Member Anthony Gittens.
Yes, I'll be quick. I just have two questions. The first question I have is just for Dr. Tompkins. Are you looking specifically at a connection for health outcomes, specifically things like rates of loneliness, depression screenings, emergency room visits, missed medical appointments, anything along those lines?
Yes. So we on the master plan for aging data dashboard that was previously mentioned, we do have specific data points related to those five bold goals. And again, it is kind of a collection of data metrics and from some of our partner agencies, again recognizing that we at the Department of Aging don't collect all this information, but
Right.
rather have partnerships with housing. I know we had some key outcome measures where that social inclusion component is also important. So we do have key metrics on that data dashboard if you're interested in viewing the data source or what it's specifically measuring. But yeah, there are some key metrics related to each of those goal areas that we talked about.
Got it. And my second and last question, um, I think in your second slide, it showed the 138% growth in that 90 plus population by 2040. Are there any special considerations for that kind of aging population, or is it all kind of included in kind of the aging population?
Yeah, this actual area has also been increasingly interesting to me. I think, sometimes we talk about older adults, but that's like what, 4 to 5 to 6 decades of individuals. And I think we need to think very uniquely about what does somebody, who's 50 or 60 need versus and want versus what do those 80 and especially, 85 and over, you've acknowledged that particular group too. So just looking at the population segments of when we talk about older adults, what does that really mean? And we've had conversations and even some of our focus groups, listening sessions, hearing out some of those unique needs of older adults across the span. Like when we think about how do we connect people to services, some older adults are comfortable with the technology and going online. Others we hear maybe in the older group would like more of a, hand or person to call. So it definitely is not going to be a one size fits all as it relates to these strategies that we implement for the master plan, but really looking at the unique needs of the populations within the population that we're talking about. So I think when it comes to the initiatives within our master plan for aging, they are broad enough that allow for flexibility to implement based on, maybe some of those unique needs that we're seeing in the community. But that's also the last, couple of months, I've just been thinking about that a little bit more about just the age segments. Very interested in learning more and maybe even connecting with you on some of your thoughts on what that could look like.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to connect on that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Member Anthony. That was great information. I do want to wrap us up on this item. I'm so sorry. It breaks my heart. This is a great conversation. But we do need to go to tab 9 and remind me if I called for public comment. I know we had the speaker, but no one online. We're good. Okay. All right. So we'll go to, thank you so much to the speakers.
Thank you, Warren. Yeah. Well,
Did you have, no,
yeah, I
it's-
think Florence had
No,
something.
no,
and
please.
It's important because I did wanted to follow up with Warren and Michelle that as the planning committee chair, I'd be more than happy to meet with y'all. But I did also acknowledge Florence, so.
Yes,
we can be
please.
quick,
Go.
Florence.
Yeah, I mean, I could go into plan. I think that what what are that just they are. Oh gosh, is that because they're more just investing more? Is it really just like a dollars question, or are they doing like creative things with routing, with technology, with community engagement? I think that resources is obviously really important there, but I'd be interested in if we have like best in class examples of folks being creative to make the most of the resources that they're being given, which is never enough, as we know. And so maybe that's something we just follow up on, and I can join a planning committee meeting.
There are
Yes.
examples of different city-based programs and even like East Bay Paratransit and other services that find ways in implementing their services in a way that's integrated and is trying to meet the needs of the consumers. It's just we're gonna have a tsunami of seniors coming
Right.
down our pipe for services, whether it's transportation or housing or long-term supports and services in the next 10 years. And we are not prepared,
Right.
or transportation or otherwise. And so this is a wake-up call for everybody.
I just wanted to just add, my mother served on the Commission on Aging, chaired the Commission on Aging. It's good to see Jackie. My mother, Cheryl Brown, former assembly member, who also worked on the master plan. But I was just thinking about what committee member Giddens was saying about that 80 to 90-year-old age group and the desire to age in place. My mother always talked about that with us, people at home, and what are the specific transportation needs that they are going to have, wanting to age in place, but get to those doctor's appointments, dealing with the things like loneliness, being isolated in their homes, and what are those specific transportation needs. So that's something I think we should be thinking about as well. When you see that graph and you just see that number, and all of us can even attest to like what we're seeing in our own families, folks wanting to live at home, they're in their 80s, their 90s, no longer able to necessarily drive to those appointments. And then what are the transportation issues that they might have? Something that we should really be thinking about. Thank you for this presentation.
Yes, thank you so
Sure.
much.
If I may,
Yes.
I wanted to just conclude with like a staff comment so that it's clear that we heard loud and clear what folks were asking for in terms of the needs assessment specifically. So staff is planning to go to subcommittees with this. We're planning to start with data implementation subcommittee because the first step in the assessment is largely a data collection exercise. But we obviously heard a lot of interest. And so I think what we can do as staff is as we prepare for that subcommittee meeting, we can make sure that anyone who's interested in engaging in that conversation has the opportunity to. And we just really appreciate all of the input that we got today.
Yes, thank you. And I was just going to highlight that too, that we should definitely have a broad conversation in the data committee. So thank you so much, Member Rousey, Warren, Jackie, once again. This is so great and so needed for everything that's happening, not only around transportation, but housing and all the social services. But let's go really quick to tab 9, interagency updates. This is our standing interagency updates item. I will pass it to Sasha to start the staff presentation.
Thank you. So tab 9 is our interagency updates report. So staff usually uses this item to update on recent advisory opportunities, upcoming advisory opportunities, and outcomes that we may have had. So this item also includes our crosswalk, our member requests, and our work plan. And we will open it up for any comments or discussion.
Were we?
Were you gonna do the member?
Sorry, we're gonna go over any slides now? Okay, because I know we run out of time. Okay. Yes, so I know Vice Chair Ramirez and myself have been really advocating for the crosswalk and just, highlighting some of the requests from other colleagues and even the public, things that have been brought up. And I know today, I hope that it showed that we're acknowledging some of those items, such as complete streets and some of the presentations we saw. So I'm so grateful to staff for listening to the input of this committee. I know we're running out of time. We definitely have to be out of here because we're going to get kicked out of the room. We did do our member updates up front this time around versus at the end. So I hope everybody had an opportunity to address their reports or requests. And I just, thank you everyone for being here in San Jose. Thank you for the welcome in the region. I know he's not in the room anymore. All the staff, all the hard work. Commissioners, thank you again so much for being here. And just, we have a lot of work ahead. And I'm just so grateful to be part of this work. So at this time, we're going to adjourn the meeting. Thank you all so much.
Commissioner.
Oh, Chair Falcon, do you want to end?
Just really quick, I wanted to acknowledge Sasha Linkert. This is her last meeting. Yes? What? Oh, are we not supposed to say anything? Well, hey, you would have known anyway. I just want to acknowledge that she's done a great job with the EAC. As with great staff, they move along to do great things, equally great things. I won't say better things, but equally great things. So,
Yes. For hard work. I know sometimes I bug you in the middle of the night to get some bookings or whatever. I want to acknowledge all the amazing work and all the time that you put into this committee. So thank you on behalf of all of us. Thank you so much, and we're gonna miss you.
Yeah, and just so everyone knows, Sasha has a well-deserved promotion at the commission, but she won't be working on EAC matters anymore. But that's why.
Congrats.
Yeah. Vice Chair, do you want to close us with anything?
I just appreciate all the discussion we've had today. I think it's super fruitful. I really think that the complete streets conversation was really, really powerful, and I think will continue moving forward. And as Chair Gonzalez mentioned, right, I think it's our intention to make sure these kind of conversations come to this table, so we feel like our collective ideas can be heard, and then we can also, help impact policy in a real positive way. So when we reflect at the end of the year, we can see the needle moving. So appreciate every one of you.
I think no, I just wanted to say, I think it also reflects on the fact that when we have an opportunity to sit down and talk together, like this workshop that we have, a lot gets done and a lot is expressed, and then we don't feel that angst that we didn't get to say something, because you guys, this morning was phenomenal. And then to be able to have the meeting in the afternoon is really nice. So whatever the subject matter is, if it's a major concern, we need to have that time to have those workshops. So thank you.
I believe we are adjourned. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great meeting. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Is there a staff gonna hang out outside for or? I think,